Hello everyone, you join me for a horrific revelation. It turns out that Ebb, formerly considered a British man, does not like baked beans. Just one more reason to detest Ebb. Hello everyone, welcome to the show. Can you all hear me okay? Let's make sure of that before I go on too much. I don't drink tea as well either, Ebb, to be fair, so perhaps that's standard that applies to me as well. Now then, 2 changes today I will go through quickly because I don't want to waste anyone's time. Change number 1 is the timer up there is now it has 3 hours by default. Before it was 1.5 hour by default, and then every amount that was added on added to the time. So minimum I'd do a stream for only an hour and a half, but there was almost always contributions to make it longer than that. I've decided probably a better way to do it, or at least the way I'm doing it now, is default 3 hours, which it always was anyway, and you pay if you want me to go on for extra time. So every contribution contributes to extra time, not just the usual amount of time. However, each amount that is sent in is less, but it also decays slower, or decays less. I think it's complicated, but I think it'll be better. We'll see. Second change is if you're a patron, Subscribestar has a rather complicated set of circumstances for whether you actually count as a patron or not. It seems that you can be active or inactive, marked inactive without you being notified, without me being notified, merely as a matter of not paying attention to the site for long enough. And why would you? I don't do anything on their site. You can be marked as cancelled if you deliberately cancel it. You can be, the billing can fail, but then you can also be it can also stop charging you for several months, but not mark you as inactive, and not because billing failed. That last condition really, really threw a hammer in a wrench in the works. But now I have worked it through in my code, and it should notify me of all of the correct conditions at the right times. It should tell me when people are inactive, and I will then notify them, because Subscribestar does occasionally require you to poke it to make it keep going. So that's much better now. And if you have therefore, thank you, Years. If you've therefore lost your patron role on the server, then please go and check your Subscribestar, because it's almost certainly, for a good reason, it's almost certainly because it hasn't actually taken the payment for a while. And that's only fair. So, thank you, Years. Years says, busy working and have nothing clever to say, take my money. Thank you, Years, greatly appreciated. It's added 10 minutes to the show. So yeah, as I said, I think currently it's set 1-to-1, so £1 for 1 minute, which I know doesn't sound that fair, but it also balances better for people that send in 100 or 1,000, for example. The rate at which it contributes after the first hour, I think, decays down to, I think, 0.2, whereas before it was 0.1. So it will last longer now. So if you want me to go on for 8 hours, it's easier now. But if you want me to go on for 20 minutes more, it's a little harder now. So it's a different balance. We'll see how it works. So that's stuff out the way. How's everyone doing today? A bit of a late stream today, but I was dealing with the patron stuff beforehand. And thanks to young Isaiah for discussing the topic that ended up leading to me fixing it. And also for fixing his patron thing. It looks like the Subscribestar website is actually quite unhelpful with the information it provides, which is why I didn't really know this before. But now I've fixed it. And yes, G-Servitor, that is very me. This does in fact contain mostly green Monster Energy, as is tradition. It's called Wizard Fuel for those that have missed it. I'm not sure if one user, I shan't say who, one user, it seems, has 2 different Subscribestar accounts, which have failed payment for totally different reasons, both linked to the same Discord account, and that really threw me for a loop. I had to consider that level of exception in my code, but hopefully that should be done now. One of you may or may not know who you are, gave me a bit of extra work to do with that. That was a bit complicated, but I should account for that kind of situation now. So yes, I will also soon add tiered roles for the different levels of Subscribestar contribution. So if you want to become a subscriber on Subscribestar, you already get benefits on the server. The people with the little Chad icon next to their name, they're the people that are patrons on Subscribestar. It should now detect your patronage and give you the role within about 10 minutes, not half an hour anymore. We're seeing if it'll take that. So if you want to do that, that's fund.oozloo.net. Really helps the show long term if you do contribute. And I'm not going to stop streaming if people contribute there. Yes. Good job, says Eb. Okay, so let us begin. Oh god, I'm distracted by a tomboy now. G7 posted one. That's pretty cute. Okay, so we will do now a content vote. You must now vote upon which content you want. The vote is in chat, and then we'll begin. I have today not very many memes, but I do have memes. And I have quite a lot of stories, many of which left over from last time. I don't really have anything. I have a few things that are new, but not a lot that's new. If there's any new stories you think we should cover that have come up in the last few days, one of them is the new cast of Not Lord of the Rings. I have that available as a story. We can look into that. So, what are you voting for, chat? Gaming is, of course, also an option. Feel free to vote for that if you like. So let's see. 1 vote for gun. Not sure what that would mean. 11 for news. We could go straight in with news. It's not tradition, but we could do it. 3 for memes. 2 for boomer. I'm not sure what that would be. Wow. G7, that's tempting. Especially if it's a tomboy doing the killing. Go straight in dry, recommends Angry Duck. Invader requests lubing first. Well, you two are going to have to figure out what the correct answer is there. All right. And remember, G-Servitor, I see the hat. Remember, contributions via tip.oozloo.net allow you to bolster one of the votes, adding super votes, which stay added until the thing you voted for wins. I may at some point also make it so that people who are high-level patrons get to add super votes. I may just vastly improve the content voting system by essentially programmatizing it, and allowing people to vote with more power than they would have otherwise, depending on their roles. Probably won't affect roles that are not patron-related, only the patron roles. So mods aren't going to get more votes, for example. So we'll give it another 10 seconds, and then we'll continue with whatever you guys have voted for, which it looks like is going to be news, unless there's a massive run on something else. But probably not. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. Looks like it's going to be news. So, we shall go straight in with the news. I'm again distracted by a tomboy. G-Servitor, you know me too well. You know how to distract me. Yes, I did, Vil, but I haven't been going long. All right, so let's go for the news then. If I start on, what's this? What's the first thing I've got here? Oh yeah, this was funny. We can do this quickly. I'm a superior judge. You can't arrest me. Massachusetts Judge Shannon Frisson yells during her domestic assault arrest, police reports say. Who heard about this? Now, here is a little bit more information. Many of you, many racists in chat, will already have assumed certain things about this judge. Of course, I could not endorse such a thing. But then you kind of look at the further details. Here is the judge in question. Never judge a book by its cover. Superior Judge Shannon Frisson of Massachusetts. There she is. She is barely female with the very short hair. She is of African descent, and she has a lot of tattoos and bling when she feels like it. And she is also a judge. Exactly, Daddy Bill. She. And this is the woman that did this. I'm surprised no one has posted the correct GIF for this yet, because she wasn't domestically abusing a husband. The Massachusetts judge arrested for allegedly there it is, allegedly grabbing her wife by the hair and yanking her head back during a dispute told police, "I'm a superior judge," while being put into custody, according to police reports. Judge Shannon Frison, or that's probably pronounced wrong, but either way, who sits in Worcester, I'm sure you'd pronounce it Worcester, Superior Court, was arraigned Monday in Marlborough District Court on a charge of domestic assault and battery. She was released on personal recognizance and returns to court next month. Now, yeah, this is in the US, but what was it that I thought? I didn't know that arraigned was a word that you guys also used. I thought that was just UK. My mistake. I'm not sure what personal recognizance is, but if you take it by the literal wording, it kind of sounds like she got released because someone personally recognized her, but I don't think that's what it actually means. It probably means something else. So there's not much of a point for me to make here, really. Like, this is a sample size of 1. I think what the only 2 points are: 1, funny how she thinks she's immune from being arrested, especially for a violent assault charge. There are arguments, of course, about Duluth model, about arresting merely on the reporting, about them always arresting the husband. That's wrong. But if there's reason to believe that she actually was being violent, which let us assume for the sake of this this point, but not overall, for the sake of this point, if there's reason to believe, good reason to believe, that she was instigating the violence, which I think given the wording there might have been, then yeah, you don't get away with it. You don't get away from being arrested just because you happen to be a judge. Unless, of course, you own the police in the area. And then, of course, the other point you can make from this is the demographic point, shall we say. The argument that lesbians abuse their partners quite a lot, that there are statistics for that as far as I know, and then also her race, which there are also some statistics about that as well. Real mass hole hours on the Oozloo stream today, says Daka. Yes, this is literally a Massachusetts woman. The proper pronunciation is Worcester, says Daka. According to who? Because when you show the word Worcestershire to an American, they'll pronounce it literally. They'll pronounce it Worcestershire, usually. But do locals in the US to the town that you have called Worcester, or your Worcester, did they actually call it Worcester? That's good. Also, do you have a Oozloo head with him looking disappointed? Oh, there were some of that, yes. You asking Silent. No trick spelling. Is that actually how Americans pronounce it? That's good. That's good. It sounds like they get it right sometimes then. All right. G7 says black women abuse their partners a lot too. Fair enough. I will take your word for it. Let's see what we got next. Let's skip to some of the new stuff, actually, because I do have some stuff from last stream that we didn't cover. What was that? Oh, this is so funny. We have to look at this. Oh, this is so funny. Okay, what was this? This is different. Let's do this quickly first, okay? So, US Politics Polls on Twitter asks, should the United States end all aid to Israel? Majority, about 69% actually, say yes it should, with 25% saying no and 6% saying not sure. A Twitter user named Ari Samberg, with the Israeli flag in his name, says, shut this poll down. And the impulse to think that you can change public opinion just by silencing a poll, as opposed to simply, well, manipulating the opinion of those that read it. Like, you're not going to change the opinion of those taking it, but you may change the opinion of those who read it and didn't have an opinion on it, that then solidifies what the public's opinion is. So, but still, the idea that you have the right to tell other people, don't publicize the information that reveals that my ideas are bad, or not necessarily bad, but unpopular. It's a mindset I just will never understand, and frankly, it's kind of disgusting. But I don't know if this is photoshopped, but I can believe that it's real. So assume it's real for now. He asks for the poll to be shut down. Lo and then behold, Twitter did shut the poll down. The account was suspended. Now, this is based on a grainy, low-quality screenshot that I scrounged out of the Cabal meme channel. I don't know if it's accurate. If anyone can corroborate or de-corroborate, I'd appreciate it. But what I can do is I can go and actually have a look at the account and see if it's actually removed. So to talk to politics, US politics poll. So twitter.com/US politics poll. I think it's case insensitive. Have a look. Yeah, that part at least is true. And we can't check the rest unless there's an archive somewhere I don't know about. we could try the archive page of that Twitter, but no, like the latter part of this appears to be accurate. I don't know about the former part, but the latter part appears to be accurate. So there you have it. This might all be completely accurate. So speaking of all completely accurate, chat, I have a real treat for you today. Now I'm glad that young Isaiah is here, or is he here? Was he here? He was here. Oh, he's gone. Well, that's a very convenient timing. I would be glad if he was here because I think this might be kind of in his wheelhouse. Because something absolutely hilarious happened recently. Now, many of you will remember the men, the myths, the legends, Patriot Front. They're back in the news because and by the way, my reckoning on that was it was one of the most obvious Fed ops I had ever seen, possibly the most. Other than the gaggle of Feds standing around in that, there you go, thank you, Invader, that. Other than that, it was the most obvious display of Federy I'd ever seen. Now, there's a bit more information on them now, something else has happened. I think it's this. Yes. According to a Twitter user named Mikhail Thalen, Patriot Front had its data leaked. This video sums them up pretty nicely. While the camera's on, we aren't Nazis. While the camera's off, Sieg fucking Heil, etc., right? Nazi stuff, etc., essentially. So, shall we watch the video? Because I expect it's going to be completely cursed. But, bear in mind, this is very obviously a Fed op, and what they're doing here is probably just an attempt to get whoever we have a few people they've managed to convince on board a bit further, maybe even radicalize some people. So here is the video. Ready? But by the way, before I play this, this is pantomime. Do not take this seriously. It's obviously not real.
Life, liberty, victory.
Life, liberty, victory.
Want to check it out?
Damn, son, that might be a cut.
That's a good take right there.
Sieg fucking Heil. Let's fucking go. I can say that now that it's over.
Beers! I want to have my finger up.
Life.
Yeah, it was terrible acting. Congratulations, Agent Smith, on a job well done. Sieg Heil. So, chat, I would like you to give a percentage as to how aglow this is. Vils posted a bunch of glow mushrooms. Kaiser Holt has contributed and says, why can't obvious Feds wear nice suits like Feds did in my father's time? It might even be less obvious than Patriot Front. Anything is less obvious than Patriot Front. Everything. Conservative says, notice how they all leave the frame before fully removing their face coverings. Yeah. No, I said before, if just one member of Patriot Front removed their face covering, then we would have some information that would allow us to identify that they are Feds. Now, the excuse that we don't want the government to find us is a semi-viable one, but then there's a lot of other conservative figures who have not been just black-bagged by the government. There are some that have, under certain circumstances, but there's no particular reason to assume that they need anonymity. What they're doing is not illegal, otherwise the Feds wouldn't be doing it. Not even Sieg Heiling is illegal, at least not in the US, yet. So, there's no reason for them not to reveal it. I suppose the reason that if they were real they might give is that they plan to do things in the future that will be illegal and they don't want to be identified in that way. And so, yeah, I can kind of understand. The problem is, you would have seen someone by now. Like, it's all too clean. It's all too perfect, which is part of the reason it's such an obvious Fed op. Now, they're not wearing short sleeves here, which you could argue maybe makes sense for if they were real, but more likely is because of the thing I noticed in the Fed gaggle gathering, where they all had the exact same muscle mass in their arms. I expect the same would be true here. We've gone through many reasons to suspect that they are fake before now, including their perfectly crafted corporate graphics, various social media presences, which just does not happen with grassroots right-wing movements. We talked about recently the idea that feds just have no idea how to combat meme culture, and this is kind of like the same kind of approach, the same kind of people, just doing their very best to fit in, and it's so obviously fake. Those of us that are in the culture immediately recognize it's fake. What you might want to be concerned about is the people who are not very well embedded in this culture yet, who might be drawn into this. But then what we come back to possibly is the fact that people around the center, as I consider myself, classical liberals, people who are not radicals of any kind, but, let's say not objectively radicals, not anywhere near the fringes of the Overton window, but contrary to the current establishment ideology. So against the orthodoxy, but not so far that it's within the realms you might call extremist. Nowhere near ANCAP, ANCOM, or whatever else, but still radical against the establishment. People like that, especially the classical liberal variety, seem to have a pretty good track record of bringing extremists into a more reasonable ideology. It's been happening for many years. So perhaps that's the solution for people that aren't very well initiated into the culture war yet and get dragged in by someone like this. Though I suppose better for us to increase our reach so that we can reach them better. But we don't have the resources that the feds have, sadly. So yeah, this happened. Now there's a bit more, because this video is not the only thing that allegedly leaked. If we scroll down a bit, there is a bit more. Leaked chats reveal evidence of hate crimes by US fascists on Gizmodo.com. Gizmodo cooperating with the feds. There's another one. There's on unicornriot.ninja. By the way, Ninja is a TLD for some fucking reason. Here is a screenshot of the leaks. Nice, they've avidly provided the leaks all the way back to 2017, as I'm sure are completely genuine. And not simply there to establish a history. Interesting that there's nothing 2019, 2020. We can have a look at the leaks. Either way, I'll give you the link to the tweet. I think G-Servitor posted it earlier, but here is the tweet chain. Random leaks scheduled ahead of time. Indeed, Kaiser Holt. Yes, this could have been set up genuinely from 2017, but it's pretty unlikely. It's more likely that the dates are fake, which is not too difficult to do. Let's have a look at what this is. So Gizmodo. Is it even worth reading this, chat? Because it's lies based on lies. It's not even lies based on facts. It's lies based on pantomime. Is it worth reading this at all? It's just going to be cringe. Like, they're not even... Gizmodo probably aren't even being, quote-unquote, taken in by this lie. They probably either realize it's a fed-up or have been paid in some way to do this. Cabal.uzlu.ninja. We could genuinely do that. There's actually quite a few, there's a lot of TLDs we could use. There's one in particular I was looking at getting for years, which would have been really cool to have, but there are issues with getting it, make it really awkward, and so I haven't done it. G-Servitor says, everyone is on Unicorn Riot. You are literally everyone who uses Discord is on Unicorn Riot. Yeah, I'm aware that there are Discord leaks. I think I once looked through... Someone linked me to Discord leaks that include my name. There was nothing interesting, really. But yeah. That's true, Isaiah. That's true. But the numbers are a bit different, sadly. I'm not bankrolled by the entire US taxpayer. All the US taxpayers, of course, divided into the budgets, relevant budgets. I wonder, actually, what the budget of Patriot Front is from the US government. Probably more than my own. Probably quite a lot more than my own. But yes, I am lobbied by feds on an individual level, but I am not a fed myself. The budget is yes. Well, it might be bright. It might be. All right. What was this? That's different. So, did you guys have anything else on this matter? Because I mean, we can have a look at the files. Let's have a look at the files. Here is the selection of files. All of these were leaked within the same few days. Thanks, Fauci, and thanks, Mr. Dark. So let's have a look at their earliest stuff, shall we? Vanguard America Patriot Front from 2017. Discord log viewer. Southern Front. See, maybe it was a real group that was then co-opted. Maybe, I mean, that would be the way to do it, surely. This looks like a series of right, okay, this is a JavaScript object with Discord IDs as the keys and Discord names as the in a sub-object as the entry. Beyond that, there's other data as well. User index. I think then it's going into certain use. This might just be the discord.js print of all the data on a server. There's a bunch of messages here too. I'm not going to look through this. But there's no reason to believe that this is real. I mean, if it's the feds, they could literally have set up servers with Discord with dates back in 2017 for the messages in 2022. If they had wanted to. There probably are easier ways to do that as well, but that probably would have worked. So that's that. Viewer HTML. This is a JSON viewer. We don't need this. PDFs. June 10th Rally Plan of Action. Open letter to the state of New Jersey. So we could find out, I guess, if these guys used to be genuine and were then co-opted. This looks hastily thrown together. This looks very hastily thrown together. Let's see what the next thing is. Open letter to state of New Jersey. Different font, which gives them a bit of credence. However, it's still a standard Microsoft Word font, I think. I think this is Calibri. This is definitely Calibri. And then this is maybe Candara. It's the serif, the basic serif font. But it's a very basic document. We could have a read of this. We have Vanguard America, etc., etc. Response to the article, specifically informing the find everything. So, chat, press 1 if you would like me to bring young Isaiah onto the stream and have him comment on this as a industry expert. And young Isaiah, ping me if you'd like to come on. Yeah, Times New Roman is so old and dated now that it is kind of Chad to use it at this point, but not yet, and not quite. It's halfway between Comic Sans Papyrus and actually a good font. G server that never votes for feds. Times Old Roman. See, that is very old. Oh, we have shocking new leaks from Patriot Front. Here they are. Biden was overheard saying, "I'm proud of you, boys." Fantastic. Maybe Isaiah. Oh, Isaiah is there. Hold on a second. Let's see what happens. I wonder if there's any evidence of this actually being sent, because it is listed as an open letter. This is... Let's have a look. Vanguard America, State of New Jersey. Vanguard America, State of New Jersey. Young Isaiah literally cannot comment on this. I have a feeling that might be because it would compromise a current US federal operation. So, all right, so let's have a look at what this is. That's different. It's all different. So this is the only thing that's on this. Opencorporates.com. It's not loading. Isaiah, are you allowed to say why you can't comment on it? Oh, this is fucking ages ago. Vanguard America, Domestic Profit Corporation, jurisdiction New Jersey. Okay, so maybe it did exist at one point. Maybe it was real. So hold on. So if maybe the theory here is that 2017, Vanguard America actually existed, and maybe Patriot Front was also a name for it. 2018, maybe it continued. Maybe there was a small amount of extra work done then. But either way, 2019 and 2020, it was gone, defunct. It disappeared. 2021, the feds chose this as the name of their organization because it was an already pre-existing organization. What do you think I might be on the money there, chat? Let's have a look in 2018. All right, fair enough, Isaiah. I will not make you lose your job. Perhaps Isaiah merely can't comment because he doesn't know whether it's a fed op or not, which does not incriminate him in the slightest. 2018, Discord. There's audio from 2018. That's interesting. Let's have a look at it, see if the audio sounds like it's acted, shall we? So February 13th, 2018.
So basically, at a lot of universities, like I think we hit like 70 something universities. Basically, what happens is there's the open web, right? So like all the IPs are out there, right? So you have your network, you hit that IP, and then you get set into another sub network. And so basically, we were just hitting IPs and sending the code to it. And if it was a printer, it would print it out. So I forgot the exact results. 1 second.
So far, this sounds real enough, which lines up with my theory that they resurrected it in 2021. Dirty Bill says, Years mentioned having come across someone calling themselves Patriotic Front sometime back. Maybe she has insight into this. Yeah, possibly. I don't know if she's here, but someone could ping her and see if she knows. Chat, so far, you with me? This sounds like it could be genuine. Well, I'm not sure, but it could be. It's not as fake as the other video that we just saw.
It was... Yeah, it was 20,000 printers, and it was... hold on. I want to find you guys the...
Let's have a look at another bit of audio, shall we? This is from the next day.
Dude, women are retarded. Like, that's why I've fucking... I was in the same logic as you, and then I realized that I was like, fuck, they can't fucking like do this. Like maybe there's like a small percentage of them maybe are rational, but like
I never said they were, dude. I never disagreed with that.
Oh no, well, you said that that they shouldn't want to, and I was just saying that
it's the same main speaker as the previous audio. He's talking about how women are irrational. Say what you want about that. Let's see what the latest thing they had is. February 23rd. Most recent thing.
Awesome. I love it. Sorry the logo is so complicated. It's a lot easier than the VA logo. Believe me. LeBlanc. How's it going, my man?
What up? Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. What you been up to?
Nothing shaking this week. I've had a bunch of rain and then nights at work, but
this sounds real to me, especially with the shitty audio. Some of it does sound a little bit like Isaiah, doesn't it, Wig? I don't think it's him, though. So, I'm currently liking this theory. I'm not seeing anything that contradicts it. That they were a real group that stopped. I mean, the latest thing here is February. The latest audio leaks they have is February, although that's also the earliest, so maybe it was a very short period of leaks. Either way, they stopped sometime in 2018, and then for 2019 and 2020 were defunct. And then 2021, suddenly, they appear again. And I think when you go to leaks from 2021, we're going to find a lot of much more Fed-looking things. Of course, it's possible that they were partially a Fed group anyway. These I'm not sure how real these look, because these are from 2017. I wonder if it might be possible. I wonder if they've got any leaks here about. I mean, they have leaks about the Discord accounts. I wonder if if any of the Discord accounts still exist, or if we can use the names of the Discord accounts to contact the old people that used to be in it, see what they think, see if they think the current group is real or not. I see. I understand. I had no intention of letting that be implied. That wasn't the idea of the idea. The idea was merely your expertise in judging how this looks, essentially. It's completely up to you. No pressure at all. But if you would like to come on and talk about it, you're welcome to. All right, then. I will bring you on. Hello, Isaiah.
Hey, people. Isaiah here.
So, Isaiah, do you want to just briefly introduce why I think your knowledge here might be relevant to people that might not know, and of course, give whatever caveat and qualifier you prefer as well.
All right. So allegedly, I work in the Intel community, and that's pretty much my background in this.
And I think
yeah.
you also wanted to make it clear that you're not endorsing.
Oh yeah, I do
groups.
not. I do not support any of these groups, and I do not think that the feds are infiltrating them.
Okay.
Allegedly, but yeah, the situation with this is you have to figure out two things. One, where are they getting all the funding? Two, how are they having a training area in order to conduct physical fitness? So it looks like they're a bunch of military age males, which is a qualifier. They're all young. They're in their like early or late 20s. Maybe some of them are in their 30s. It's hard to see outside of the little hats and everything. And then the situation is they have funding for pretty high quality video. They have an area of operations. They have all the same uniforms. It looks like they're in an actual proper uniform and not just like something tailored together. And secondly, the pants that they're wearing aren't cheap. So that's another thing, like, where's the funding coming from?
Yeah.
The thing is, most of these grassroots organizations are pretty fucking poor.
Yeah, and why are they bothering to organize into such a uniformed militaristic structure? From what little I heard from the old audio, it sounded like it was mostly community and trolling.
So it almost looks like this group has either gotten funding and has improved their little operations, or they had some outside assistance. So I'm willing to accept that this was an organization that has existed for a while and has merged over time with other ones, and maybe that's where they're getting all the support from. But this kind of popped out of nowhere. Yeah. Like the amounts of news reports we're seeing on them, and it seems like it's being pushed to the forefront when there are other organizations that are like way worse than what these guys are. Like it was said in the chat, like 100 of them were chased away from literally 15 Antifa guys, which is kind of a bitch move. But if you had rules of engagement, that would explain it, rather than like was it Portland where the Proud Boys beat the shit out of a whole bunch of Antifa members inside the bar.
Mm.
So if they are behind it, then it's more like a job. Or if they are an actual organization, then to these people, it's more like a job and they don't want to risk pay or get actually injured in the job than something that they actually believe in. So it's the matter of like, where is funding coming from? What's actually happening with all this? And if it is a honeypot, is it done by a NGO? Is it done by a private backer? Is it done by a foreign power? Or go off of that as you will.
So would you say that it sounds like you're saying it's not likely that these are just feds? I'm guessing that that's because of the fact that this wouldn't make sense operationally. And it sounds like you're saying that they probably are real, but the funding is probably coming from either feds or a foreign foreign government or somewhere else that wants this group to exist and thrive as they are.
Because there's definitely, yeah, exactly, and there's definitely a point for foreign money to come into the country and start up groups like this. And you could totally get some sort of like rogue former veteran or whatever who could do like the uniform appearance and set up actual like training operations and everything. Any like E5 can do a basic amount of that kind of stuff if they've gone like rogue, you know? So like they look very, very uniform. They look very drilled. They're using vast amount of wealth when it comes to like these kind of organizations, because most of them that you see, it's just guys in like maybe a black t-shirt, but it's not like the same exact black t-shirt. It's just like whatever the guys have inside their closet, and it's usually a very loose uniform policy. But these guys look like they're very strict. They're very regimented, and it looks like it's a job for them, which you have to get bankrolled by another organization if you're doing that, whether that be an NGO or whether that be a foreign government. And there's definitely a cause to do that, because destabilizing a country in any form would be perfect if you're trying to do like something against that nation. If you can destabilize a country, you can basically do anything outside of its borders, and they won't do anything about it.
Yeah,
because they have problems at home.
Yeah, I understand. So you think it's probably more likely to, for example, be maybe Chinese or Russian money and possibly personnel running this?
So it wouldn't even have to be personnel. There's more than enough people in this nation to have outlier individuals who would join factions like this. And even if like you have someone like China, China would bankroll a right-wing organization just because it causes because it destabilizes the region.
Yeah. The modus operandi, though, does not seem like a grassroots group, even if it is being funded from externally. So I think the external funding, if it is Russia, China, or someone like that, would have to change the modus operandi of the group, change the entire intention. It would no longer be the image of a grassroots group. So either there is significant lobbying and guidance from the person that's funding them, so you have to do this if you want our money, or personnel have infiltrated and have risen to the higher echelons of the group. I'm guessing.
And that could very well be.
It doesn't look like it's real people running it. Whether it's US feds or operatives from other nations, that's all contained within our initial suspicions. It wouldn't have to be US feds, but that is, I think, one of the more obvious possibilities. If not necessarily,
it could also be NGOs too. It doesn't necessarily have to be a foreign government. Non-governmental organizations do fund organizations like this in other countries that we know about.
Yeah,
there's NGOs that fund like paramilitary groups in other countries.
G7 says the FBI has been caught fabricating terror cells before. I do know about that. Why are you so certain that it couldn't be US feds?
Oh, I'm not certain.
Okay,
but I'm not going to support that hypothesis.
Fair enough.
Because I don't see any backing for that right now.
Okay, fair enough. So a lot of different possibilities, but all within the same realm of it doesn't look real. I think probably we would agree on that. It doesn't look like a real grassroots group.
And I agree with that.
Yeah. So yeah, G7 saying as well what I essentially said, that in 2017 and 2018, they were unorganized, they weren't physically fit, they got no media coverage. 2019 to 2020, this has disappeared. And in 2021, they reappear with all this fleshed out social media, with uniforms, with uniform graphic design across all their social media, a library of videos, and massive media coverage all of a sudden, out of nowhere.
Yeah, so, that's not grassroots. That's foreign funding or funding from NGOs or funding from other governmental organizations. Like you would not see someone, like, unless there's someone in there that got really freaking rich off of like Bitcoin or Dogecoin. That's not something that you would see.
But if they did that, would they resurrect the same group or would they start a new one? I suppose they could. Seems less likely.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense that they would resurrect the same group. Like, especially if you're the one bankrolling it, you're the one who kind of wants to be in charge of everything and start the history from that point forward.
Yeah, the only reason to resurrect an old group is to create a plausible history to throw doubt on the idea that it's artificial. I guess.
Makes sense.
Kitler, it looks like the name was changed back when it looked real. So, according to the leaks anyway, which I'm sure I could go into in more detail and see if there's anything in here that corroborates it, but then of course it is still the same source. According to the leaks, back in 2017, they were called both Vanguard America and Patriot Front, possibly at different times or possibly as aliases. So I think they changed their name back then. But Patriot Front is what they're called now, but I don't think that's just changed. Which is why they're being listed as the same thing here. Let's have a look in the README, see if there's any metadata we may have missed. This torrent archive contains nearly 500 gigabytes of leaked records from Patriot Front, a US-based neo-Nazi organization with chapters around the country. This leak includes videos, photos, documents, and chat messages. Unicorn Riot is releasing this information as part of our work covering far-right white supremacist neo-Nazi organizations. We've shown plenty work against the socialists as well, haven't you? Maybe they have, actually. For more, etc., etc. 2017 reporting. They actually did an article on it, apparently. 2018, American fascists. Well, let's have a look at what the article shows. Maybe they've got some information on the actual people involved. Or what they were doing.
So Wig made a really good point here, and I just want to put that out there really quick. He said, also, how do they have all this tech and organization and have an Antifa group gain all of these data leaks? It almost seems like it's purposeful.
It's not impossible they could blunder, yeah, but I agree.
Not even blunder, it could also just be a purposeful leak. Like sometimes organizations will leak information as it's basically like just showing the other side or showing the opposition what they have.
So that's the alleged leader at the time. I wonder if he still exists. If he's doing anything. Former Marine Corps recruiter from Roswell, New Mexico. More pictures of them. Hey, that guy on the right looks familiar. I swear he was in memes around that time. Alex Fields. Oh, wait, wasn't he the guy that ran over the girl at Charlottesville? It's the same guy. Oh, that is in Charlottesville. Well, then that makes sense. Makes sense. I've seen him before. So they had an insignia back in 2017. See, I can't see any of their arms really to see if the physical training is identical. If these people in the background here are part of the group, then I don't think so. They don't look like they'll have the same level of physical training.
Also, homegrown groups normally don't do like PT tests or like fitness examinations or anything like that because they're going to want all the support that they can get.
Yeah. A
lot of these people look like they're doing regimented like fitness. And like, do we know where they're doing it? Like, are they conducting like a get together of like, okay, like this month we're going to be making sure everyone's fit enough to do these tasks and everything. And if they are, it would be very easy to find.
This one's from March 5th, 2018. And apparently back then they were saying we're Americans and we're fascists, which the alt-right did see a decent amount of popularity around that time, which waned shortly thereafter. But I wouldn't be surprised if there were groups like this. In fact, the thing is, I wouldn't be surprised if there were, but we don't really know for sure that any of the ones that we saw were not fake. Richard Spencer's group, for example, or whichever group he was with. Richard Spencer glows quite heavily. I'm not sure that he is who he says he is. He might be. But that's another example. It makes it difficult to know if we can actually bring precedent to say, yes, this is plausible or not. There's audio. There's some very realistic looking. They do look of different physical fitness levels. This looks more real. They were all wearing different clothes as well. It might not be. some of them, like 2 of them, have the insignia, or maybe even different insignias. So yeah, this looks more grassroots, but it's still, it like this the symbolism being used here is still so obvious that it might well be just a more elaborate fake. It would be very strange to think of Americans being proud of being fascists. The contradiction there is pretty strong, but it's not possible.
Yeah, fascism is not part of our history.
Mm.
There's nothing to harken back to.
No. Mm. So it still holds up the theory that that they were resurrected by, as Isaiah has fleshed out, could be US feds, could be foreign feds, could be NGOs, anyone with money essentially that wants to see political disruption in the US. I think I'm confident in saying they've almost certainly been resurrected from an existing, seemingly fascist group from the US. And I don't know if that was ever real, but indications seem to point in that direction. But now it seems much less real. So the answer, I suppose, is it'd be better if everyone ignored it. But then, of course, the people that want it not to be ignored won't. And it's better if we ignore it, maybe, but it's better to be aware of all the details as well. So I suppose we'll just keep an eye on it with the full knowledge that it's fake now, as it very much seems to be. Yeah, Florio, exactly. So, there you go.
Also, just because it's not like a grassroots organization doesn't mean that the organization isn't real. It could totally be this could completely be an organization run by American people that are being bankrolled by someone else, but that other someone is setting standards for those people to meet.
Yeah, of course. That's what I mean about modus operandi. The way they're acting doesn't look like what you would do as a grassroots movement. They would have to be directed by someone who wanted this specifically, who wanted this regimentation.
Yeah, there's not a lot of fat people in camo, like in this organization. Like that's what you would normally see from like a right-wing grassroots organization. It's just like average Joes in camouflage.
The idea about it being real people is certainly viable. But did you get the impression, as I did from this video on screen, that they were acting?
It did sound scripted.
It's obviously not an objective assessment, but if that's the case, then at least a large part of their organization isn't real. And any real elements from it would probably be aware of this, either be okay with it on a large scale, which is less likely because that implies a conspiracy, or be unaware of it, which is even less likely because it implies you didn't see this news. So, what have we seen of the group that implies that there's actually a lot of them since 2021? What have we seen that implies it's not just these 5 people in a room with a camera?
So we have seen people get out of U-Hauls and quote unquote fight Antifa, which they really just ran back to the U-Hauls the second that they were engaged. So U-Haul is a shipping company. I'm sure you already know about it. But like, looks like they just rented these vehicles. There's roughly about 100 of them there, all in the exact same uniform, exact same pants, exact same shirt, hats, face masks, everything. And looked super regimented. And then they fled back as soon as they were engaged. That's not something that you would see from like an angry, extremely far right, fascist organization. Like,
yeah,
if Hitler had these guys for brown shirts, he would probably just shot them.
Yeah. So, okay, so yeah, I think we did, as Jesus over there's link there, that picture. Was that from more recently? I think it was. In which case, we know that there were demonstrations with a lot of people. But my point is there any reason to think that we've seen any indication of more of these people in a situation, more of these people than would be reasonable to set up in a sound stage, for example? You know what I mean? Is there any indication that they have done real things with real amounts of people? Or could it all be literally paid actors, as a distinction from the group is owned by an NGO, but the people inside it are real. NGO or something else. So making that distinction. And I think the numbers and the actions that we've seen so far doesn't go outside the realms of what could be set up for actors.
Yeah, and like, especially if you look at that photo that was just posted inside chat where they all have like different versions of American flags, like that displays wealth. Like when you're looking at like a grassroots organization, most of these people are like poor AF.
Yeah.
And like they're all wearing the exact same fitted top with the exact same patches, exact same place. Some of them are different like khaki bottoms, but some of these khaki bottoms are like fucking 511 Tactical, which is a brand, and they're not cheap. That's like $100 pair of pants, and like they're all wearing the same exact kind of like face mask covering, same kind of glasses. It's very regimented. Like this for me, if we saw this, or if I saw this like in a different country, this would just be a paramilitary group.
Yeah,
and paramilitary groups are almost always foreign funded. Like almost always. You're never going to get a paramilitary group that is not funded from an outside source, because in order to fit this kind of like regimentedness, you need to have funding. Like this is a very wealthy organization, if it is as big as they say they are.
Yeah. True, Invader, but retards don't have this kind of money. Well, I suppose that's not true, but if they were just retarded, there are several things here that probably wouldn't have happened. Yeah, indeed, G7. So here's a still from footage of Patriot Front running away. Meanwhile, here is a still from Proud Boys fighting Antifa. We'll go on a limb here and say Antifa probably started the fight, but I don't know that for sure. They usually do, though. So yeah, it's how many indications that are not conclusive but are strong do we need before we discount this group? I think we've already reached that by far last time, but there's even more today.
If you look at the Proud Boys there, like, first of all, I disavow all these organizations, including the Proud Boys.
Understood.
And, but like, if you look at the Proud Boys there, that's an actual grassroots organization, just like a lot of these Antifa members are. And although there's indications that Antifa is funded by other NGOs or even foreign powers, with the Proud Boys, that's not really the thing. So they're way less uniformed. Yeah, they're all wearing black and have American flags, but like, it's like a Walmart t-shirt here. Like, this is like $9 shirt. Like, that dude's already owned ball cap, and like those goggles I purchased off Amazon for like $30. Like, this is not a like huge regimented force.
Now that I look at it again, that's actually a British flag. Have we unveiled the truth that the Proud Boys are a British funded group?
Yeah, look at that. It is the Union Jack.
I guess it's Union Jack on the left and US flag on the front. So I guess it's just an Anglosphere flag, which is pretty based, actually.
Yeah, now we know for a fact that Britain is full of a bunch of right-wing extremists. And the Lib Dems were right.
Yeah, but at least they're gone. So, anything else on this subject before we move on? Because I think that's all the information I have, and I think we've made a pretty strong conclusion for now. Other than that, I do have more stories. Anything new? Yes, there are a few new things. We can have a look at that. Do you have any interest, Isaiah, in... is it this? No, it's not this. Hold on a second. I will find it. I think it's actually as a meme, yeah. We'll talk about this now.
So, before you continue, I have no clue how to actually operate Discord. I don't even see your stream right now.
Hold on. My mistake. I usually only set up the screen share when someone is in here, and I forget sometimes. There you go.
Okay, see it now.
Do you know anything? Do you care at all about this story? Lord Demrangs. This is a post on Gab. Some cast members from the new Lord of the Rings, which is it Netflix or something? Here they are. They've got Lenny Henry, who is, I'm not kidding, like a children's comedian from the UK, or at least he was. And then 3 other people here. And all of the people that they have chosen for these screenshots are of African descent. But there are other screenshots that show that there are some that are not of African descent, but not many. Let me see if I can find the other source I had on this before we get back to the
So
other
are
stuff.
these supposed to be the men from the East?
Yeah, that's the question. Are these the not Haradrim, the other ones? I can't remember their names. I did have more. Let me see if I can find it. There it is. So here's some more of them. So Lenny Henry down there, some others, and then you've got Sarah Zwangabani and Emma Horvath are 2 that are not of African descent, and then there's Ismail, who it looks like maybe African and Arab, and some other African. Now, you know me, chat. Race doesn't really interest me very much, but I'm fully aware of how much it interests our ideological opponents. Far too much, frankly, and so unfortunately I do have to talk about it. It appears that they are doing exactly what was predicted in that meme that we showed last time. If someone in chat wouldn't mind posting that meme for reference. Seems they're doing exactly what we referenced in the last in that meme in the last stream, which is exactly what the left does tend to do with media these days. Not only will they change the race, which isn't really the problem, it's why they're changing the race that's the problem, and that same reason is also the reason the writing will suck, and almost everything else about it will suck. There are some things about modern media that does actually continue to track getting better, which indicates that it's not a fully merit-oriented problem. Music, sound design, often graphics as well, all kinds of things, mostly technical things, mostly they don't have to do with the humans involved, mostly they don't have to do with the quote-unquote soul or spirit of the thing, the more human aspect. Those things get better. They track with time, generally. But the story of the quality of the narratives and the appropriateness of the actors, as well as the trueness to the original source material, these things have been in the fucking gutter for about 10 years. And just happens to line up with the introduction, all of a sudden, of a new radical leftist movement which has taken over wide swaths of our society, including largely media production.
So go ahead.
I suppose the question people were asking about this is, well, we now know who the orcs will be. Do we have any of the other cast members?
So for me, I really don't care about blackwashing or whitewashing as long as it's not like a historical film. Like, I've thoroughly been enjoying The Witcher, even though that I know it's going to make a lot of people in Cabal because like not everyone is Polish and white. But for me, I don't really care. Like, is the story good? Is the substance of the story good? Are they actually like maintaining at least some sort of adherence to the original source material, which The Witcher has been doing so far in my mind. Whenever you have a show adaptation off of a book, they're going to have to change a lot of things in order to have it be on film, because they're completely different mediums. You're going to have to change the format of how the story is told.
Yeah.
And like, that's a thing that not a lot of people get, especially when you're going from a book over to a film, or a film to a book, or a video game to a film. And some of the stories just don't transfer, like Doom. Doom was terrible. It should have never made 2 movies off of it. But like, when it comes to this kind of thing, I don't really care. But like, if you're going to change the already established lore of the film industry on this, especially since they are saying like this is just another add-on to the Lord of the Rings series, we already have established that like all the people in this area are basically all white. So now you're going to go in and basically retcon all the source material that is made inside the films themselves. Like, I've watched Lord of the Rings multiple times, including the extended editions, and I don't remember a single time that I ever saw like an Arabic person, or like a person from any part of Asia at all, or like a black person.
I was right earlier. It was the Haradrim were the the sort of darker skinned ones, and then the Easterlings. I don't think you ever see them in the movies, but I think it's fairly safe to assume that they're Asian looking, and that's probably the intention. But either way, those are the ones that are of different races. But the rest of the people of Middle Earth are all pretty much European. And an example that G. Servitor has given here is apparently there is a news story which is attempting to normalize the idea that there are different variants of Hobbit, but they appear to be trying to normalize the idea that there are some variants of Hobbit which are just black, which are basically of African descent in real life. And here is some art of those groups. As you can see, one of them has slightly darker skin, but they're not of African descent. There is more to being of African descent than simply having slightly darker skin. I think they are in the book, or in whichever of the books Tolkien goes over this, they are described as having slightly darker skin or slightly different skin colors, but they're not described as being of this degree of dark skin or of anything similar. It's not merely the skin color that differs.
One thing that's interesting about this, because a lot of this is pushed for political means, so with that, these same people will view whitewashing as like the worst thing that's ever happened to the film industry. Like, whitewashing is by far the worst. So why are you doing the exact same thing except with a different race? And saying that that's good now, like this is good. Like for me, if you're having a historical film, have it be based off the people actually inside that region. If you're having a fantasy film, I don't really care. But if you already have established lore inside that fantasy film, then don't retcon it. Because people, especially if people already love those films, like I'm pretty sure nobody hates the Lord of the Rings.
Well, they will now. When this goes out, I imagine. So, where was the other one? There it is. So it's Amazon Prime, it's not Netflix, it's Amazon that are doing this. So, as I recall that this is not based in the original Lord of the Rings timeline, end of the Third Age. Is this from a different span of time in Middle-earth? If so, it shouldn't really be called Lord of the Rings, because it's not about the same story. But chat, am I wrong there? Is it a retelling of what Peter Jackson did, or is it from a different age? G7 says, the Amazon LLTR, by the way, is supposed to be in the time of the Silmarillion books. The Hobbits didn't exist back then. Well, that's interesting. So how could it be anything to do with the rings? The Lord of the Rings is literally Sauron. Did he even exist when this is set? Silmarillion, is that not Second Age? I think Sauron may have been like near the end of the Second Age. I may be wrong. It's all old knowledge I'm having to dig up here. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. If it took place like way in the past, then are they saying that all the black people turned white?
I wonder. I bet that they will. Maybe the reason they're going to the past is to blackwash Numenor, to be like, the people of Middle-earth used to be immortal, great beings who were noble, but now the nobility of men has failed, and they're all bleached with their corruption. That, I'm sure, will be the narrative.
You know anything about the Hotep movement? Because that's very similar.
Yeah, I understand the Hotep movement is not quite as bad as the black nationalist otherwise movement, the one behind Black Lives Matter, but it's not far off.
Yeah, like just the whole blackwashing European history is just like, that's a riot if you ever get a chance to look into it.
Yeah, we was kangs. And the, not just that, but also Egyptian, like ancient Egypt was black. The only evidence they can find is some images that make it pretty clear that they were also just slaves there.
Now, Sudan, so Egypt stretched all the way down up into like where the area of the Blue Nile is. And with that, like people in like Sudan and everything definitely were black, and they were in Ethiopia as well, which was a rival nation to ancient Egypt. But even with that, it's like they didn't really, like the northern Egyptians didn't really consider the southern Egyptians, or what we would call like the Sudanese now, to be like actual real Egyptians. They were just like client state.
Yeah.
And with that, the Sudanese built fantastic pyramids and great like architecture. They had their own cities, flourishing economies, and everything. So it's not like you shouldn't. If you're like really dead set on, if you're a person who's really dead set on like the black, like we were kings things, like you were in your own regions, and don't try to steal other people's history, because that's definitely like North African, Arabic descent, Semitic descent history.
Mm.
In your own lands, you had far more pyramids. You had great sculptures of your own. Why can't you just promote that kind of history?
Okay, I didn't know that. That's interesting. So they weren't pharaohs, but they had their own stuff. But again, I think possibly what you said is even more instructive there, that this is not necessarily blacks doing this, but it correlates with that a lot. The radical left trying to simply take other people's things, make them their own, instead of making their own things, which they've been doing for years. It has been the main flavor of the culture war when it comes to actual cultural artifacts. Stealing, corrupting, and then dropping when they fail. It is what someone would do if we assume that it's deliberate, which it probably isn't, but if we assume it is what someone would do if they wanted to remove or destroy the culture of a nation so as to subvert it and weaken it. There are many nations in the world that would want to do that to the US, for example, and also its allies. So...
It makes sense.
Daka reminds us that Shakespeare was a black woman, you toilet seat complexion cave beast. Thank you, Daka. Kitler says, I bet they will take the black Numenorians and make them blacker instead of followers of Sauron. Oh yeah, there were black Numenorians, but I think that was just a name, wasn't it? That doesn't actually refer to their race. Isildur, the guy who refuses to throw the ring into the fire with Elrond at the beginning of LTR, is alive in the Second Age, and the Amazon show is going to give him a sister to call him toxic white male, I'm sure. Isildur will be the only white male, because he is a famous sort of, not necessarily, I can't remember the guy's name now, Judas. Not necessarily Judas, but something similar to Judas. He's a famous Judas-like figure. So he'll be the only white guy in the show.
Okay, so I just read the chat on my phone. I gotta go back on something here, or go back to something. So yes, I am talking about Netflix The Witcher. And the thing is, whenever you have like a new medium, it's way better for you to just not include that in with any of the other existing like IP stuff at all. So like, if you've read the books like I have, I've read all the books, and I read the books before I played video games. And I was like, these video games aren't as good as the books. But like, as soon as I separated them out into basically two different like alternative universes, it's like the books are fantastic, the games are fantastic. And now I'm doing the same thing with the show. Like, that's its own complete universe separate from the books. Because if you aren't following the book material, like word for word, it's not going to be as good as the books that you've already read. So it's like, why would you even watch the show at that point? But if you accept it as its own established universe, then you can like all of them. And I treat it like that. I don't treat it as like what I consider like the actual lore of The Witcher, because the actual lore of The Witcher are the books. And then even with the video games, like that's its own established universe. Mm-hmm. It doesn't follow a lot of the stuff that the books does. It has storytelling elements and everything like that. But it doesn't, like, if you read the books and you play the video game, they're two completely different universes.
I respect that position. I think, though, you have to be careful to remember, though, that the only changes that should be allowed or that should be respected in that case, with very few exceptions, are changes for the format. So if something in the book wouldn't make sense in the format of a video game, then change it. If something in the book wouldn't make sense for the format of a movie or game to movie, etc., then change it. Beyond that, there should be minimal changes. That's probably a fair format to hold, but it's much easier to think of it as just be true to the original source material. People will generally allow for those exceptions. So perhaps you're right, but perhaps it's better for people,
especially with something like The Lord of the Rings. Like, this is why I don't appreciate what's happening with The Lord of the Rings with all this. Like, it's going to suck because you already have that established like cinematic universe of Lord of the Rings. If you read the books and then you watch the movies, you can like both, but the movies do not portray nearly like a quarter of the stuff that happens inside the books. It's practically not even the same universe. The movies are very good. The Hobbit was decent. But like the actual Lord of the Rings movies were very good, but they're their own thing. But now that they have this going and attaching onto that universe cinematic, or that cinematic universe of the movies, if this fails as hard as it seems like it's going to be, it's going to completely ruin that entire series of movies.
Similarly to Star Trek and Star Wars, it will be a good indication that we should just ignore it as part of the canon. It's sad that we won't have anything new in the Lord of the Rings canon, any new media, but what we already had was so good, same thing goes for Star Wars and Star Trek, that it's not really a problem.
It's almost the same thing. Yeah, it's going to be the exact same thing with Star Wars. The original series for Star Wars, 4, 5, 6, is the established canon. That's what Star Wars is. I would go so far as to say 1, 2, and 3 were decent, and they were a good add-on. I like them, but then again, I watched them growing up as kids, so I actually have some nostalgia for them.
They didn't
But,
appear
like,
to be
I
subverted
literally-
either way.
Yeah. Yeah, they didn't seem to be like subverted, like they were just bad. like that's the difference. But like I literally cannot stand like the previous 3. Like at all. I don't even consider them part of Star Wars. And I'll do the same thing with this if it ends up being shit.
Indeed. Same thing with Star Trek as well. Everything after about 2010 was kind of crap. The Star Wars 7 was okay, but they totally ruined it for the next 2. Telly G says 7, 8, and now 9 are now the established canon. They're canon, that's what matters. No, they aren't.
No,
It is
they're
something
not.
very important that you guys need to understand. And this is something that comes back to the root of almost every argument that you will end up having, is that no one has the absolute authority to define anything. It's ultimately just like with, yes, we have democracy, but ultimately the people with the biggest sticks have the power. We can choose to respect that when someone who owns the product says this is the canon, that it is, or we cannot. And if enough people don't, then essentially it's not. What a word means, what a term means, what a category or defined thing means, there's no universal standard. It is down to whoever's interpreting it. And so we can have our own definition. Their canon, Telly G, I'm not sure if you were being sarcastic, but some people have said that seriously. No, they're not. Who says they are? The people that own the product. So if someone that hates the product buys it and says, it's now canon that insert stupid thing that doesn't make sense here, is it sensible to consider that to be canon? Or is that sensible to consider that to be a subversion of the thing, a deliberate lessening of the thing, at which point the canon is lost in the eyes of the people that like it from that person and is essentially returned to the people? That's the way that you should have envisioned it. That's maybe not the legal standard. Legally, they have the property, the rights to it, but there's nothing in the law that defines what canon is. That's defined generally by perception. There are so many people who will act like definitions are absolute. They will not see past the level of it's useful to all have the same standards. They will refuse to see past that level. But there is another level underneath that, because these ideas, they require human minds to exist. And below that level, where yes, it is useful to have the same standards, below that level, you recognize that this is just what people say. It's just whether you agree, and whatever you agree with is what the standard is for you. There is no absolute authority on any definition. Dictionaries don't even attempt to do that, by the way, not in English anyway. But even the French language, which is regimented from a central authority, you don't have to agree with them. And maybe many French people don't use the language as they regiment it. Even though they say they are the absolute authority, we have no equivalent in the UK, for English anyway, but the French do. You don't have to agree with them. You can use the language however you want. Most of the time, people are going to use the language the way it makes sense to use it, the way that it's most useful to use it. And that is ultimately the clearest metric that you can use for definitions is what's useful. And not everyone can assess that easily. But that's what dictionaries are essentially trying to do. They're trying to figure out the most useful definition for a thing, how it is used. And that's how we should do it too. Is it useful? Is it in many other synonyms could be used? Is it good? Is it wise? Is it sensible? Is it right to consider episodes at least 8 and 9? As I said, 7's all right, but as a trilogy, 7, 8, and 9, is it useful or any of those other things to consider them to be canon? No. It's not just that they aren't good. Large parts of 1, 2, and 3 weren't good. Large parts were, but it's not just that they aren't good. It's that they seem to be deliberately bad. Or it's somewhere up the chain. It's not so much that someone said, I want to make bad movies. It's more that someone had significantly prioritized something unimportant, like ideology. Or that the hiring practices had become anti-meritocratic, etc., etc. It's like someone had made the deliberate decision that could have easily been detected as bad, that had lasting consequences across the entire production. That kind of level. And that's best case scenario. Realistically, you could assume merely subversion is the answer to that question about why it was bad. And therefore, it is sensible not to consider it canon. It is sensible to relinquish Disney or whoever as the official, relinquish the canon from them. It's ours now. It's the people's canon. We get to decide. And that is what we say. On our authority, that's what the case is. And so for us, those who agree, that is the case. There'll be those that disagree, but that is how it works. Having a single established standard for every definition is helpful, but it can be abused. And the only way to fight that is to drop the wrong standard when you think it's wrong.
And if we go if we still stay on like Star Wars right now, like, do you remember the old like expanded universe of Star Wars with like the books and stuff? There's lots of books in there that people consider to be canon. There's lots of books that people don't. And the thing is, none of it is canon. So you can have outside source material that people do consider canon. It happens a lot in like the 40K community. And like there's also things inside of 40K that some people don't even consider canon that Games Workshop puts out. And there's no reason that you can't do that with Star Wars as well. Like you can say like the Solo movie isn't canon just because it was crap. Or you could say like The Mandalorian is canon, even though that they produce it as well. And then some of these expanded universe books are canon. It's all relative, but like if the majority of people say that's canon, that's pretty much what the main story is.
Yes. Same idea, yeah. Yeah, exactly, Malcatello. It's a good example, Malcatello. According to the guy who created the graphics interchange format, or GIF, he says it should be pronounced GIF. He's wrong. According to, I think, probably the majority of people. If you disagree, fine, but you're wrong too, in my opinion. GIF it's what everyone has always used, pretty much. It sounds better, it makes more sense. It's pronounced graphics, so graphics interchange format. GIF makes more sense. Either way, you can disagree. My point is not to make the argument of GIF versus GIF. My point is merely that the person that creates or owns the property does not necessarily define what is canon about it. And the same thing with dictionaries. We had the reason that I was reinvigorated to discuss this recently is that a member of the server called Falcashin, who is relatively new and has been arguing a lot with people, which is fine and good, but he's from a more left-wing perspective. He's a detractor. Again, welcome, but I don't particularly respect his intellectual caliber. He was having this struggle as well. He was either incapable or unwilling to look below the level of commonly established definitions. But even then, he was wrong about what was commonly established. So that was funny in itself, but the point is that he was trying to argue for a specific definition for left and right. And I tried to convince him, tried to educate him, essentially, because this is true whether you like it or not. The way these concepts work. This is how it is. This is not even a matter of opinion. No one has absolute authority. He was arguing that, no, there is a definition of these things. It is this, and you have to use it. And if you don't use it, well, then you don't understand definitions. You don't know what these terms mean. That's not how definitions work in any context. They are established by axiom. They are established by agreement on what they are. And in some contexts, there are given definitions for those contexts. And so in those contexts, it becomes axiomatic, assumed that you are using that definition. In a scientific context, certain things have different meanings than in normal context. This is normal. Everyone uses specialized terms sometimes. But these are established implicitly. They are not necessarily set in stone. If you want to change it, you can do. And you can specify you're using it in a certain context. You can specify you're using it in a scientific context outside of a scientific context if you want to as well. But a lot of people use these structures, use language without understanding how it works at a fundamental level, and that trips them up so hard because they've never actually thought below their basic assumptions. It trips them up so hard in arguments, especially when they are prone to simply trust authorities. And the funny thing with Falkashin is he was using a definition of left and right, which is absolutely not a universally established definition. Part of his deception, or part of his strategy, was the deception that it is a universally held standard. The other part was a blunder on his part, not a deliberate deception, most likely, that definitions are not absolute. That was the point at which I didn't particularly feel like arguing with him anymore, because most arguments actually are semantic in the end. And once you drill down to that, if the other person is not able to perceive definitions properly, then it will just get angrier and angrier and angrier and angrier. Though in the end, what he was trying to do is he was asking me to give a definition for these things so that he could then spring the trap and say, no, this is what the actual definition is. Setting it up like that is almost always done as a trap. And if someone is doing that, don't fall for the trap. Don't spring it, even if you're confident with your answer, because they're the ones saying something afterwards. They can appear to be correct, especially if they're, quote unquote, quoting an authority. What you need to do in that case is to say, if it's not a trap, then you give me your definition first. Cooperate with me. I'm not going to trap you. You have a definition in mind. What is it? And eventually he did go for that, because there's no real arguing against it. So, let's go to the next thing. We'll stay on news for now. I'll see if I can find something else for us to cover. Is Wes here? Because there is a story I thought he might like. Not currently. So I will skip that story for now. Let's see what else we have. So, okay, this is interesting. This is not actually a news story, but it's not exactly a meme either, so I thought it might be good to analyze. Just quickly. So, right-wing versus left-wing cartoons. You've got, oddly, on the left is the right-wing one, on the right is the left-wing one, but regardless. You've got a Stone Toss comic on the left here. The premise of the cartoon is to mock an idea, and the left-wing character is saying, but the government has tanks and jets, how do you beat that? The ideological opponent, liberal, is shown to be a bit smug, but is not dehumanized. And it's true, Stone Toss does not almost ever, I don't think, or if not ever, dehumanize his characters. Dyed hair for stereotypical identification as a liberal, but it's not dehumanizing. And it is true to life as well. The punchline shows just how wrong the idea being mocked is, but there's no criticism of the person. There's no criticism of the idea, yes, but the person is not the subject of the derision, just the idea, which is how it should be. So it's a good example. And of course, we've got a sample size of 1 here, but I think it's still a pattern that's fairly common. Meanwhile, the left-wing cartoon mocking the right, ideological opponents, right-wing gun owners, shown as inhuman freaks. There is no idea being mocked. The point is only to make fun of people you don't like. No real punchline. Quote, look at how ugly and silly they are. And this is a good example
Not
of that.
enough text.
Yeah,
There's
not enough text for a
in that
left-wing
one.
meme. Yeah.
There's usually a wall of text.
The thing is, an idea, a picture can say 1,000 words, which is lucky because that's how many words the left-wing person would need to express the ideas in this picture.
It's so true.
But yes, this is essentially just the equivalent of preaching with several paragraphs. They could spend several paragraphs describing their ideological enemies physically, with much vitriol and gnashing of the teeth. This is just the picture form of that. But on the left, of course, you can express the same idea with what would be in text about 2, maybe 3 sentences. Not even long ones either. And it would just be the idea. There'd be no need to describe who is in the picture. The idea would be criticized, not merely the people. And there are left-wing criticisms of ideas, but not very many, and not very good. Although that second point is biased. But usually it's just categorization into a hate category, which is common for a group that has cultural power. I would imagine that happens almost every time. So really all we're establishing here is that the ones who are complacent, dehumanizing, acting as if they have power, which they do culturally, are the left. The ones with grassroots force, impulse, and who have more need for good ideas and thus have better ideas, are currently the right.
Yeah, I just posted like what the normal left-wing meme looks like, the train one.
Yeah. It's a good example. Radical. So here's the bus on a cliffside meme, where the guy looking out the window that shows that the cliff is unhappy, and the guy looking out at the view is happy. It's a meme. So it's a nice original image, supposed to indicate that your perspective, your choice of how to look at something, can make a big difference to how you feel in general. It's a good point. Not an all-consuming point, but a good point regardless. There are other factors. Anyway, it's been made into a meme format. It's pretty good. There was a tomboy version. So the left-winger here has put on the left, the sad person, says, radical liberals who romanticize and name prostitution as work under the guise of faux sexual positivity and choice feminism. On the right, the happy person, revolutionary Marxist feminists who understand prostitution as a mechanism of patriarchy and imperialism that must be fiercely abolished. I'm glad that you went into such detail. Otherwise, I wouldn't have stayed awake. So,
yeah, and you definitely do have to read it. It's not a meme you look at. It's a meme you read. That's why she said read it and weep.
I think I still don't have a good enough explanation for this, but I have okay explanations for large parts of it. But I think I need a grand unifying theory for this particular idea at some point. But the idea of simplicity, whilst the ideas of people on the right, which I count myself as part of currently, even if not being a right-winger myself, culturally I'm on the side of the right wing. The ideas of the right are these days genuinely better for society if widely adopted. At least in the areas they care about, at least in the culture war. And yet they can be represented much more simply, or are usually represented much more simply. And I wonder if the reason for that is merely the fact that people on the right actually tend to refine their ideas, and so end up condensing them for easier conveyance. Either to their peers or to ideological opponents. But then if the right is condensing them for engagement with ideological opponents, the ideological opponents would condense them as well. Why is it so rare for popular ideas from the right to be expressed in long-ass, unnecessary paragraphs in formats like memes? Why are there so few left-wing memes that are just brief, that just express a quick idea? I've seen one or two, but very, very few. And yet there's thousands of right-wing ones of that equivalent nature. And possibly this is more so of an issue between left and right than it is an issue between culturally dominant but complacent and culturally underdogish and very active. Perhaps it's more of a left and right thing because, generally speaking, the left, at least archetypally, tends to build platforms of theory to lift them away from the savagery of nature, whereas the right wing is always reminding the left about reality, essentially, about this theory does not work. It does not match with the reality that you're trying to lift yourself away from, and so it's just going to crumble. You have to build good foundations, and so the right often is knocking down the bad foundations the left establishes. And these days they've had carte blanche for about 10 years, at least. Well, actually, probably longer than that, but 10 years has been when it's really ramped up and become visible, to build foundations just higgledy-piggledy all over the place that don't make any sense at all. And the right wing has been much weaker culturally, has been knocking a lot of them down, but a lot of them have remained standing. So it may be a left-right thing. It may be that because their ideas are more complex, are less intuitive, that therefore memes are much easier for the right to make.
So I just posted a left-wing meme that literally talks about what you were just talking about, except it is made by a left-wing person. And the thing is, they actually made a funny meme, but it's in the top right.
Yeah, so the funniest thing about this is in the top right. So,
Like,
let's actually do the analysis. There aren't any right-wing memes that just contain the N-word. And if left-wingers are looking at any right-wing memes that do contain the N-word and thinking right-wingers just like this because it contains the N-word, then they are obviously missing the point. There are very few times where just saying it is funny on its own. It's much more likely that whoever made this meme from the left just wants to pretend that their ideological opponents are only hateful, because one-dimensional villains are much easier to fight, take a lot less mental work. Possibly...
nuance is hard.
Yeah. It genuinely is, and that's a problem in a lot of areas. Possibly the issue here is that people who tend to rise socially, so culturally, rise culturally to positions of more influence on the right are just better in general, more intelligent, more comedically capable, etc., etc. But on the left, they are the people who are more ideologically, quote-unquote, capable, more orthodox, more able to live with their internal contradictions. That's what they're selecting for. The right is selecting for comedy and qualities that are common with good entertainment. Whereas the left is selecting for people that are able to live with their stupid ideas rattling around in their head, because that's what they want. That's what they need. They need someone to help them figure out how to live their lives with these contradictory ideas in their head. Maybe that's what it is. And maybe there is such a significant correlation there of the people that create memes on the right are the ones who, and the ones that spread anyway, are also the ones that have influence. Or the people that have influence are likely to share the memes that appeal to them. And because they are actually of those good qualities, they share the ones that are good. But on the left, the people with influence have no idea about the actual merits of memes. So they instead share the ones that are the most ideological. And maybe they are more willing to read lots of words because they are so desperate to find a solution for their internal contradictions. That part I'm not sure about, but the rest of it could work. And if indeed the right is, in that way, selecting for entertainment-oriented merit, then it really lays claim to the idea that we are building the foundation for the next culture.
And like, the thing is, the more you have to explain something, the less effective that material is. First to start out with, because if you have to explain it, then you don't trust your audience to be able to figure out what your meme's trying to say. And then secondly, like, it's just going to be hard to consume because now you have more text on it. Like, you can probably like scroll through 1,000 right-wing memes in like probably like, 10 minutes. If you want to read through like 1,000 left-wing memes, you better like set a couple of days aside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think to clarify, I think both you and I would agree and are saying that long form is fine where appropriate. But for sharing ideas, especially in the form of a meme, short form just makes so much more sense. So the analysis I'm doing right now, it is long-winded. I am trying to be precise, but I think that's fine because I'm not trying to make a meme here. It's a long stream. People watch for the analysis mostly. or largely. If I was trying to create a really condensed idea that I wanted to spread, I wouldn't spend 3 hours explaining it. I would condense it into one sentence at most, which I probably could do. That's why I'm looking for a grand unifying theory for the left can't meme idea. But the analysis is required on top of that. And writing long-ass articles to explain ideas is also fine. Just don't expect it to spread as effectively as doing the same thing in one sentence, or doing even a much smaller subset of that same thing in one sentence. If you can make 4 memes which explain 75% of your ideas, instead of one article that explains all 100% of your ideas, you might be better off making the memes. As long as they're short and good memes. Might spread better. Or link them back to the original article or something like that. I don't know why people don't put links or credit on memes more often, to be honest. But never mind. You could easily put like a short link on a meme such that someone could type it in. I could set up a service for that, where because it would only be my own short links, I could put really short links on my memes. Just have like oozloo.net/AB, and that would link to the reference for that meme, if there is one. Either way. Yes, another thing that someone mentioned, I think TeleG mentioned, that it might not have been TeleG actually, that the left has to set up a world, a context that makes sense for the meme to make sense. The right just does it as is, which is very similar to what I mentioned earlier about the left being, in fact, it is what I mentioned earlier, about the left being all about building up platforms of theory, and the right being more intuitive. But I don't suspect that that's the main factor. I suspect that were the time different, very different, where the right were complacent and the left were resurgent, or underdogish anyway, the left would be capable of making the good memes and the right wouldn't, I suspect. In fact, if we got to that point, then maybe the right-wing memes would end up just being many iterations of the N-word. Maybe they would be stuck on old notions about what the left is like today, but when they're looking at a left that's actually totally different in 10 or 20 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, chat, I mean, N-word, am I right? That's the kind of comedy you come here for, chat. Everyone press 1 if that's the funniest meme you've ever heard.
There are some right-wing memes like I posted in there that do have a lot of text, but like it's never like you have to like move your eyes around the screen or anything like that. It's usually just like one consistent flow of thought.
Yeah, here's a good example, the one you just posted, of a recent, probably right-wing meme that was actually good. And there isn't much text here, you're right, but let's even defend it as if this is too much, because it is more than we would normally have. This meme is specifically giving this detail to establish, I wonder how I'd word this, because this is a specific kind of meme. Sometimes when you give more words, it's like, because it's so obvious, it's such a clear thing that you're trying to establish that giving the words is kind of like ironic, that you don't need to give that information. So giving it makes it funnier, but that's a very specific kind of thing. You can't just apply that to any case where there's lots of words. And I wonder what we could find to indicate why that works here.
So it's funny, because it would be a shame if someone threw a cruise missile at it.
Wouldn't it just? So reservoir containing so much water it tilted Earth's rotation. Largest dam in the world, suspect construction, quality, and built on 2 major fault lines. More than 50% of Chinese manufacturing downriver, which is actually the case. I think it's, is it Two Gorges or something like that? Two Gorges Dam? Two
Gorges Dam.
Yeah. And then the message would be a shame if someone threw a cruise missile at it. Of course, you would never endorse such a thing, young Isaiah. This is 100% a joke.
Absolutely not.
And I will just go ahead and put do not crime. There you go. Ginge has corrected me. It's Three Gorges Dam. Damn, my mistake.
Oh, really? I was wrong too.
So, chat, any ideas as to why this does work? Because I know, like, instinctively I understand, but I'm trying to put words to it. I'm trying to actually explain it.
I think it's because it does wrap up like a huge, like there's a lot of context behind it because not a lot of people know about the Three Gorges Dam or like the severity behind it. And it just shows how stupid the Chinese were when they built this. And well, when they built their manufacturing plants after or on the other side of this huge, terrible event if it were to ever break. Like
Maybe
because this wraps up a huge grand idea in a small meme.
Maybe what we've got here is every bit of information that's added is condensed and it's all directly relevant. There's nothing on here that's irrelevant. There's nothing on here that's used to establish something that isn't key to the point. The only thing, the closest thing to that is the fact that it's on fault lines. But no, even that contributes to its instability. That probably isn't the reason it will eventually collapse, but maybe it will be. Maybe there'll be an earthquake instead of just it collapsing from erosion or someone throwing a cruise missile at it. So every part of it refers to something real and is directly relevant to why the meme is funny. Your average left-wing meme spends several hours establishing labels and connecting various bits together. But I suppose they might argue that every bit they write is relevant and relates to something real. But no, if it relates to something theoretical, something that needed to establish a later point, is something intermediate, maybe that's the problem. If it's not directly about reality, if it's about another idea. Maybe that's something that humans naturally account for. See, now maybe I'm getting to a theory here. Probably humans would tend to filter out explanations that involve too much of the personality of the person they're talking to, because it's much more likely to be just one person's silly idea rather than a well-established idea. They filter out ideas that take too many steps. Simple ideas are much easier to follow for people, so much more applicable. If there is something in human nature that deliberately filters out complexity, especially idiosyncratic complexity on that level, where intermediate steps have to be established, it could be something so deep in human nature, and therefore so useful in general, that that could explain, if it's that simple, it could explain the whole thing. I wonder, has there been a time where it was really common for the right to have to establish a bunch of other theories to make their ideas make sense? I suppose you could argue the creationist movement, in order for their ideas to make sense, they'd have to establish a lot of other things along the way. But that wasn't a particularly strong example. A lot of what they believed was intuitive. Which is why it baffles me. It baffles me. Any right-winger doesn't accept evolution, because evolution is the greatest possible ideological tool of the right wing.
Completely agree.
It's weird that the left adopts it and the right doesn't as well. But yeah. What do we have an example? Yeah, this one. Is there anything that they're saying in here? So yeah, here's another thing. Like, when the meme directly advocates for an idea, rather than showing, so it's show don't tell. In this meme, it's very tell, especially in the second one, where it's talking about must be fiercely abolished. Like, they're not showing why. They're just saying it must be.
We could probably make this meme better.
Probably.
Like this could easily be like, you know, left one like hoary liberals, and like right one Chad cultural revolutionaries, or Chad anti-prostitution cultural revolutionaries, or even you could make even wordier like that, like they do. But like, memes are supposed to be funny. This isn't funny.
No. You could put, on the right, you could put, sluts are the slaves of men. On the left, you could put, sluts are empowering. There's no reason to, it doesn't make it any funnier, but it definitely makes it quicker to read. there's no particular reason to. Maybe to a leftist that would be funny, because that is something they believe. But it's not. There's nothing clever about it. It's just saying this thing is good, this thing is bad. Also, it doesn't actually correlate with how happy you are in life necessarily. I suppose maybe it does, because prostitution, one is anti, one is pro. But that's not an idea of the left. The left doesn't generally believe that less sex will make you happier. That's a right-wing idea. So maybe this particular meme creator just has a weird idea.
No, whenever you talk to like a lot of like tradcoms, so like traditional communists, they are very like homophobic and extremely like like traditional marriages and everything, because that's the best thing for the state. It's a lot better if the state keeps on pumping out people to continue like the whole entire worker movement. I have roughly about a terabyte worth of like what you would call like tanky memes on like my computer that I could literally data dump the server and it would all die from cringe. But like a lot of them hate
are better than radical, like modern radical leftist memes.
They really are. Tanky memes are great. I don't agree with any of them, but like they're still way better. Yeah, better formatted and everything.
So, like, I've been acquainted with tankies and with other sort of classical communists of various kinds. They're very obsessed with their definitions over there. They have all kinds of specific labels. But either way, commies who aren't of the modern radical left variety, commies who actually hate the modern radical left, they are a much smaller faction than the resurgent right, but they are also against the current orthodoxy. They just happen to be on the left. And their memes are better. So it must be something to do with that. It can't be simply left and right. It must. I think my theory of selecting for cultural qualities as who becomes the most influential, it must be something to do with that. It must be that when the ideas don't actually make sense with reality, the people that get promoted to the top have some other benefits, which is also why all media sucks now, because the people who get promoted are the ones who fit the orthodoxy better. We've seen, for example, there are Discord communities, like we had a look at Destiny's community, which someone said, his is way more active than yours, when it literally wasn't, but he has millions of followers. We looked at his community, and it was the culture was so locked down with strict arbitrary requirements that the only people who got to the top in there were the ones that were best at following the rules, the ones that were best at fitting in, the ones that were best at looking like they were acceptable, at understanding the orthodoxy and the rules. Just like the kind of person that succeeds in a socialist system, it ends up with an almost direct inversion of what would otherwise be the meritorious Pareto distribution. You get the worst people, the most destructive to other people and to the culture, rising rapidly to the top. The most evil and unempathetic rising to the top. And everyone else, even if they have talent, just stuck at the bottom. Maybe it is that simple. Maybe the ideologies that promote the worthwhile people up higher are just always the better ones. Maybe that's a very central reason that they are the better ones. And for that reason, the ones that do successfully promote people to positions of influence who are worth promoting there, who are actually good at things, are the ones that produce the best memes. Because then the people that can spread ideas the best are the ones that the most people on that side like. The ones that get promoted by the standards of those groups. And when there's very few arbitrary social standards that are totally unnecessary, the ones that get promoted to the top are the ones that can express themselves the most effectively. That in that free environment have competed the best and have come out near the top. Whereas on the left, currently on the left, but it doesn't have to be the left, it could be anything, but currently the left, they have so many arbitrary social rules, which probably would happen more often for a group that is very socially orthodox. They have so many of those arbitrary social rules that the people who get to the top haven't expressed themselves properly. They haven't gone through actual tempering. And all they have learned how to do is to mimic what the ideal of all those rules are. I suppose if they were good rules, it wouldn't make much of a difference, but maybe that's just a very large-scale filtering mechanism for exactly that. Whether the rules are actually good, whether the standards are actually good. And a group, an idea, ideologies, if an ideology's standards are good, they make better memes.
So
I'm not sure
I
if
just
that
posted a tanky
fully
meme,
explains
and
it.
then so I just posted a tanky meme, and then I'm sorry, an anti-tanky meme, and then a meme that a tanky used as a reply. And this like perfectly sums up what I'm saying. Like walls of text, and then the next one is just Stalin is God. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah, so why? Because in this first one here, they didn't even have to list everything. They could have just put tankies murdering or tanky genocide or communist genocide or something. And then on the bottom, make up excuses. But even then, there's no subtlety to it. There's no layer of irony. It's just, I dislike this thing, I like this thing, or something like that. So still, it's not subtle. But on this one, the fact that they deliberately expressed all of it, it does fit into the theory I just listed, the theory I just explained, that a group with better standards is likely to regulate those who are, better at communicating up to higher levels of influence, such that the people that are better at communicating are the ones that can do it with the most brevity, the most quality, with the most brevity. But there's something else here. This is partly contained in that idea, but maybe there's also, and this is possibly more so of the current left, but actually no, maybe generally just the current orthodox group, is because, and we've noticed this, they are addicted to authorities, addicted to finding someone that supports their idea. And I think it's a midwit thing as well, but either way, cutting it differently. Because they're so addicted to authorities, authoritative sources, maybe what they're doing here is trying to mimic, quote unquote, their betters, the authorities that write these sources. They're trying to essentially write like a Wikipedia, because Wikipedia is a big old source that everyone uses and is left-wing dominated where it matters. Where it is biased, it's towards the left. And all kinds of other sources too, the press, for example. So because that's where they're getting their ideas, that's who they're mimicking. And because they're getting their ideas from articles and long-form information, even though those ideas are very often wrong or directly deceptive, tailored to manipulate them into destroying their nation even, but not always. They're not good sources, but they are long-winded sources. And so that's where they get all the information. They don't learn from each other. They don't learn from culture. They don't learn from memes. They don't learn from simple truths. What they are learning, and not always good learning either, but they're learning from articles and sources and things they think come from sources. I think that's a small factor that plays into it as well. The reliance on authority and therefore trying to look all formal. Because there's more to this than just what I said before. But I think those two combined explain a very large amount of left-wing memes being so bad.
I just like the tanky response. Stalin is a god. Like no, and there's like no other additional context. You already know what this guy's points and stances are on literally everything, and it's just like like right-wing memes and like actual tanky memes are so similar. It is unbelievable because like they already have the established context of everything, and they don't need to explain it to you. It's like, no, we're right.
Yeah, I'm not sure that. Well, either way, yeah. I think you probably. I have seen. It's been years, but I have seen tanky memes in the past, and I don't remember them being terrible. So I think it's when ideas are artificially enforced against their merit, a group can't meme because their structures for promoting by merit are completely off from what is actually meritorious. And that is how merit is determined, essentially, is by what's useful. Directly, just like definitions. So a group with bad ideas can't make memes. It's interesting. I've managed to make such a wide conclusion from something as simple as memes, but maybe that is it. Maybe this weapon is in our arsenal because we deserve it. So, let's move on to the next thing. Should we do one more story? I could do another content vote. I have some memes. Tell you what, let's put in the content vote. We'll see what happens. If you guys want to vote for news again, that's fine. You can do that. Otherwise, you could vote for memes or anything else. I do have some more stories. And if there's a story in particular you'd like me to cover, you can recommend that too. If there's a guest you'd like to have on, then I suppose I could do a guest vote as well. Maybe it's probably just fine with one for now though. See what people are after. Yeah, G70, we covered the Tom Hanks thing last stream. Harambe, is there anything new in either of those places? Because I can't, this is not like I'm not an anchor man. I don't just report on what is happening. I have to get commentary. And so if something is happening that has happened a lot of times before, there's something particularly new to it, there's not much I can commentate on.
Right now, well, not for Canada, but like in Ukraine, the UK, Poland, and Ukraine are trying to make a trilateral, treaty and alliance, so that if any of them are attacked, they all have to go in on it. So this will be a thing separate from NATO.
Okay. G7, I saw a source saying that was fake. I don't know if it is, but it doesn't look real. Also, Bell's palsy is temporary. I think very, very few people got it for like a few days. So it wasn't really a big concern. And the bigger concern was the heart attacks and blood clots, really. I haven't been following the Ukraine thing very closely, and most of what I do is not really geopolitics. It's psychology and ideology and stuff. So I haven't really been commenting on it. It's not really my wheelhouse. But I'm not close to doing so. So let's see. Where was the content vote? We'll see what people are after. More of you are saying news, so I'll continue with news for now. We do have a few more stories. Yeah, G7 says Bell's palsy can be temporary or permanent. Okay, fair enough. I haven't heard of any permanent cases from the COVID vaccine. I think when Doc was on, he was saying it's temporary. Maybe misunderstood, though. 22nd, there were worldwide protests for freedom. Also, Lord Miles is going to Ukraine. Not sure who that is, but okay.
The Lord Miles, the dude who, went into like Afghanistan and like fled Kabul, and then went to like someplace in Africa that was like war torn, and then now he just crossed the border into Ukraine the other day.
Okay.
He's kind of like a British adventure tourist.
You want to laugh, chat? Biden questions if US midterm elections will be legit.
It'll be the most secure elections in human history, especially after he's been in for a year.
US President Joe Biden has suggested the 2022 midterm elections could be illegitimate as his plan to overhaul the voting system was blocked. Right, okay, so he's... the BBC in this first paragraph have actually not been particularly biased because they haven't said his plan to return voting rights to the people, which is not what he's doing. They have said his plan to overhaul the voting system, which is a neutral way of putting it. Well, it's fairly neutral. As far I think with I don't know about any newer bills, but I think was it HR 1 or something, a bill that he was trying to introduce right at the beginning. On analysis, it seemed like it would be the perfect way for riggers to rig more easily. So that was obviously a bad idea. And so it's good that didn't pass. I don't know if this is the same bill or a different one, but it's probably the same idea. So he is now saying because it didn't pass, the 2022 midterms could be illegitimate. The funny thing is that they could only be illegitimate if the standards we already had were unacceptable, which means that every other midterm election up until now, at least in recent history, was also illegitimate or potentially just as likely to be illegitimate as the current one. This is even going along with Biden's narrative as well. Like the one that the one in, let's say, the one in Obama's first term that probably increased support for Democrats. I don't know if it did, but let's assume it did. That would also be legitimate according to Biden. Any of them would be illegitimate according to Biden. If this is the case, which of course it didn't. But then the funnier reading, of course, is the idea that Biden did in fact, which he did, get rigged in. He did not win the election, but he was inaugurated. And despite that, he is the one saying the 2022 midterms will be illegitimate. But of course, he's just saying it as a threat because his thing got turned down. Should we actually watch? Is this... No, this is not the right video. In a White House news conference, he argued voting integrity hinged on his bid to enact the most sweeping changes to US elections in a generation. Let the rigor set the rules. Tell you what, though, if that does go through, there's little hope left for protecting against election rigging. Essentially, though, what this does tell us is perhaps some hope that in order to be confident that they can rig the next election, they will have to change the rules. If you don't let them change the rules, much lower chance they can actually rig it. This might even be what he's doing now in preparation for them realizing they will not be able to rig the 2022 midterms or maybe even the 2024 election either, so that they can try to set up the idea that it will be illegitimate, make sure their guy gets inaugurated instead. What might happen in 2024 is there will be the overwhelming force of whoever is actually elected in 2024 versus the press and various other institutional forces trying to force Biden or whoever into the inauguration, where in 2020, they were able to convince the entire country that Trump lost, even though he didn't, and therefore inaugurate Biden before anyone really checked it properly. Except the people that did found the evidence and showed the world, but of course that wasn't publicized. Maybe in 2024, this is just an idea, most of the nation will realize that the election was rigged, that Biden or whoever on the left did not win, but they will still try to force the inauguration for them anyway, maybe with, again, several tens of thousands of troops, with mass corporate press blanketing and social media blanketing of the event, either censorship or propaganda. But that the vast majority of people will not believe it. In that case, that is the kind of situation that could lead to actual violence. Again, not that I'm advocating that, not that I want that to happen, but that could be a flashpoint of violence. It's one possible scenario. He also... Go on.
I disavow he's obviously the most popular president that's ever existed. 80 million people voted for him, which means that he was out there campaigning all the time. He got so much support across the entire country. I completely disagree with you. He was obviously the most duly elected president. It is so obvious. Like, it's completely obvious. He had so much more support, and Donald Trump had none.
Biden had so much support that the majority of the people that came to some of Biden's rallies were actually Trump voters. Now, how can you explain that other than that they came there because he's so lovable that he was actually able to turn them live during his speech, turn them from Trump voters into Biden voters. They showed up in their Trump vans with their Trump flags and whatever else, and all the Trump stuff, and there were more of them than there were Biden supporters at a Biden rally. And they left.
He's the most popular man to ever live.
Exactly. They left seeming to not have changed their minds, but clearly they must have done. Otherwise, why would they have been there? So, yes, vastly popular president. Makes absolute sense that he would pick up tens of millions of more votes than Obama. Even though Trump did much better in his second election than his first election, and even his first election shocked Hillary Clinton.
I mean, we all know that the only reason Obama got elected is because Biden was vice president. Like, that's literally it. He's so popular
That's a good
that
point.
he is the reason that Obama got elected.
Yep. Everyone loves the Biden family as well. Like, such a great
They have a
family.
flawless background.
Mm.
More flawless than the Kennedys.
And you know what people like as well? Biden's unrelenting, visible advocacy against anything that even looks like pedophilia. There's no footage out there of anything that looks dodgy from Biden. And he's always had spirited advocacy of good ideas as well. There's no indication at all that he's just been an empty soup political player who's probably made most of his money from bribes over the years. He's always been spirited, had good ideas, supported the little guy, that kind of thing. So it's no wonder that he is so popular.
I'm thoroughly enjoying my Batagaf care.
Well,
He promised me it, and I have it. I have Batagaf care.
I don't know what that. I can't understand the word you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's what he promised me. Batagaf care.
Ah, right. Yes. No, I understand what you mean now. Yes, he's made a lot of such promises where it's so good people sometimes don't understand it when they first hear it.
Yeah.
And there was that time where the sonic effect of his movements, unbeknownst to us retards, but the sonic effects of his seemingly blunderous movements on those stairs up to Air Force One actually saved 30,000 lives just down the road, most of them puppies and kittens and orphans. We couldn't tell, but his genius was such that the movements he was making, the sonic effect, actually affected a chain of effects, like a butterfly flapping its wings and wiping out all of humanity. That's why he tripped up those stairs to Air Force One. 30,000 lives, chat. What a
Really
hero.
national hero.
Anyway. And those who are able to should, within the bounds of the law, ensure that the 2022 and 2024 elections are just as clean, organized, and legitimate as they should be.
And this man should have a Nobel Peace Prize for his works in the Middle East. I mean, like, Afghanistan, they now have the government that they wanted. Like, this is a man who's truly bringing peace to the world. We've never been in a more peaceful time. No one's at war right now. There may be talks, but those are obviously obtuse, and no one needs to listen to those. But, like, everywhere in the world, completely peaceful. There's not really any wars happening right now.
No threats of major powers trying to take pieces of land that have long been defended by the West against their encroachments. And now it looks pretty genuinely likely that, especially if they coordinate their movements, they will actually succeed in taking these two areas of land, etc., etc. Well, China already got Hong Kong. I wouldn't be surprised if Taiwan's next on their list. And then, of course, Ukraine. That's the thing, is the subversion, it may be coming mostly from China, but it also benefits Russia, because ultimately the goal of it would be to make the US weaker. And almost everything we've seen can be aligned with that goal. And that benefits both Russia and China. The weaker the US gets, and NATO and all of its allies as well, the more territory Russia and China can swallow up before anything is done.
It's a lot easier to, like, stop them from getting the territory than it is to get it back.
Yeah, that's probably true.
And if they can just grab it right now under the, like, brilliant management of Joe Biden, then they have that permanently. Like, short of invading, there's nothing that you can do about it at that point.
Yeah. Then let us hope the 2022 election is legitimate, and also the 2024 election is legitimate. Because if it is, then it won't be Biden, or whoever succeeds him when he pops off. So he vowed to retain Kamala Harris as his 2024 running mate. Well, that's good to know. He also conceded shortcomings in COVID testing and messaging, but pledged it will get better. That's what you said when you came into office. What's that, Dirty Bill? Oh, wow. I hadn't seen that before. Is that real? It appears to be a picture of Kamala taking her oath of office on a purse on the Bible.
Based.
So I don't know if it's real or Photoshop, but I mean, the thing is, like, I'm an atheist. I might have questions. I probably wouldn't bother doing anything about it, but the idea of swearing on a Bible doesn't mean the same for everyone. But I wouldn't put the thing that holds my money in between my hand and the Bible in a very Christian nation when I swear allegiance. So this probably is what she's actually swearing allegiance to as well. Let's make it clear.
My campaign donors, I just want to say this one's for you.
Yeah. That's true, Bright. You can't be too hard on her. You know she'd burst into flames if she ever touched a Bible. It's true. All right, where was I? I've lost it. There. I think we'll move on from this story. Probably extracted all we're going to from this. And probably a lot of people are tired of me saying over and over again what happened in 2020. 2020, yeah. Which already went into in plenty of detail.
It's the freest and most fair election.
Indeed. I feel freer even just having discussed it. Let's see what else there is. Well, seeing as we're on Biden, let's have a bit of good news. This is from the Gateway Pundit, a fellow pundit organization, so don't take this as direct news. It's with their opinion, but that's okay, because that's what I do too. Look out, Biden's economy is setting records with some of the worst results ever seen in US history. Hopefully they give us a lot of numbers here, because I do appreciate numbers, and I can't scroll the page. Oh, there we go. President Trump had arguably the greatest economy in US and world history in 2019, they say. The opposite is true with the Biden economy, and Americans are really suffering as a result. Under President Trump, the US saw unemployment at less than 4%, the best in decades. The stock markets were at all-time highs, real wages were growing and outperforming the increase in the cost of living. The US GDP was the greatest in US and world history, and inflation was near zero. In addition, the US became an energy producer for the first time in decades, and the price of gas was near or less than $2 a gallon. What a difference a stolen election makes, says Gateway Pundit. The conservative Treehouse reports that unemployment claims are rising. The US Department of Labor has released an unemployment claim data, and the results show claims of 206,000 last week, an increase of 55,000 from prior week, and the third consecutive week of increased claims. A.B. Picky says, another perspective, it could still be a purse that looks like a Bible. Okay, yeah. No, that from that perspective, I don't know. Yeah, it does kind of look like it's got a zipper on the side, but it also looks like a book from the side. I don't know why. That's kind of weird. Maybe it's to waterproof it or something. There's a fact check on this, apparently. Hold on, we're skipping back to the previous story quickly. From the Dispatch, did Kamala Harris take the oath with her hand on a purse? No, the new vice president was sworn in using two Bibles, one on top of the other, for when one Bible just isn't enough. Why did this happen? Two Bibles with the hand placed over both. She didn't have her hand on a purse or wallet. Why was there a zip, though? Something that looks like a zipper is visible on the second Bible, which may have been the source of the rumor that Harris placed her hand on a purse or wallet. From a different angle, though, it's obvious that the item on top is a leather-bound Bible. But why with the zip?
Bibles like that.
Say again, sorry?
You can get Bibles like that because like a lot of people carry them around. So like that way you don't get pages torn or anything like that when you put them inside like a book bag.
All right. I mean, I guess now that I know that, it makes more sense, but I still, for the inauguration, why use a convenience feature which is misleading visually? And why 2 Bibles? Why not just one? Daka says, that just makes her oath twice as strong, bro.
It might have really been what she was going for, being like, I am so oathful right now.
That's odd, but sure, maybe it was a Bible. Of course, we don't know what's in it, but none of this really makes any difference. We know what kind of person she is anyway, pretty much. All right, there's a picture of a Bible with a zip. Fair enough. So no, they exist. I can accept that. Just I'm not sure why they would use it for the inauguration. Why use one that has a visual quality for convenience, which makes it misleading, makes it unclear? And why use 2? Very odd. Either way, probably not relevant. So, she has reports that productivity in the third quarter dropped the most since 1960. Won't read the details because I'm supposed to be looking through some. I thought this is going to be about approval rating, but I don't think it is. Inflation, highest it's been in 40 years on paper, with real numbers being worse, apparently. NASDAQ fallen into correction territory after declining more than 10% since its peak. So this is just a bunch of evidence that he's not doing so well, which that we already knew. That might interest some of you.
So with this, like, it's actually thoroughly real here in the United States. Like, even a place like Minnesota, which the economy is doing fantastic here, but that's because of our own policies that we've set. Like, unemployment rate here is like a little bit over 2%. And that's real unemployment too. But like, even here, like, my gas prices are just through the absolute roof. And like, meat, it's not even worth buying anymore. Like, my wife's a vegetarian, and I'm just pretty much eating vegetarian lifestyle too, because like, a steak that used to be $6 is now going for 18. Like, meat prices are super high here. And like, I used to be able to fill up my gas tank for like $1.97. And that was just like last January. And now it's like $3.41. So like, I'm going less places, which means I'm spending less money, which means that everything's just getting worse.
Yeah. So the next thing I have is something that may be more positive. Epoch Times, much brighter than before. COVID-19 cases plunge across US. COVID-19 case counts have dropped across the US in recent days, stoking optimism that the Omicron-fueled wave is subsiding, similar to this news we had in the UK, where the government has decided during the middle of a what's the word? Media circus anyway, during the middle of a controversy that the leader is in, that he has decided to get his party back on side by shutting down the COVID restrictions. Something similar may be happening in the US pursuant to this information. 34 states have recorded a decrease in cases in recent days, not including states that reported a single-day drop, according to the Epoch Times analysis. That includes some of the states that saw huge Omicron-fueled increases, including New York, California, and Florida. Omicron is one of the newest variants of the CCP virus, they are clear to say, which causes COVID-19. Other states that have seen fewer cases recently include Alabama, Delaware, Georgia, several others. States in every region of the country have reported fewer cases, and a smaller number also have seen a lower number of people being admitted to hospitals with or for COVID-19. Omicron is more transmissible than the Delta variant, which dominated the US for months last year. However, it causes a smaller percentage of cases that require hospital care or lead to death. States saw a significant increase in positive tests with the emergence of Omicron late last year, in part just because the COVID-19 vaccines provide little protection against infection from the strain, which does seem to be indicated by the information we have as well. Cases in New York shot above 90,000 in January 7th, but have since dropped sharply, hitting 26,000 on Monday. So, the change in policies that we had in the UK, lowering the restrictions that we had, which were relatively few here still, seems to be the correct idea both for the UK and the US, probably most other places too. So if there are any states in the US, if you are in a state in the US that still has heavy restrictions, there really is no justification for your government to maintain them, at least according to the tendencies that are indicated by what we're reading.
The responses from at least in my state, have been way less severe than they were originally. So we did have a huge spike in the Omicron variant here in Minnesota, which used up a ton of hospital resources. And like right now, we're at the most strain we've ever been when it comes to hospital resources. And but like only 2 cities have issued out like mask mandates, and that's it. Like nothing really has changed because it's too much of a touchy subject to do any sort of like lockdown or literally anything else. It would be political suicide. And the 2 cities I've done there are 2 largest cities, so that makes sense. But it's just like now you just need to wear your mask when you go somewhere.
Yeah. I don't know exactly how bad other states are, but I imagine a lot of Democrat states still have pretty significant restrictions. New York, California probably do. If so, I doubt it's necessary. Let's see what else there is. I'm just looking for interesting stories. I do have quite a few here. What's this? Okay, so let's see if there's anything down here. What was this one? Oh yeah, this was a thing. I guess I just wanted to show you guys this. So there's a website called thispersondoesnotexist.com, which I tried out a little earlier. Whenever you go to it, it generates a face. Well, it probably doesn't generate it. It gives you a face from an existing list of generated faces, which are completely AI generated from the ground up of people that never existed, which is a little freaky, but useful potentially. And here's the idea that someone on 4chan had. This is an idea from the end of November last year, so fairly recent. They say, generate fake picture, put it on fake Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn profile. Put in profile that you work for left-wing companies, for example, Google, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Starbucks, etc. Write right-wing, racist, anti-vax comments and opinions, and then watch leftards call companies and dox unexisting person. Companies stop responding to complaints, waste their time, doxing doesn't work anymore. Profit. It's not a bad idea. It would be high effort, but it probably would work if enough people did it. I think Petrocourse has posted an example. Yes, Bright, that person has never existed. Nothing that majestic could ever be contained in this universe, I'm sure. Now, I think I had it open somewhere. Not here, though. Do I have it open here, possibly? Yes, I do. So I'll show you a few examples, chat. Here's someone that never existed. According to the page, anyway. And here's another person that never existed. At least according to the website. Again, I have no doubt that these are AI generated, but they are almost certainly not being AI generated on the fly. There'll be a big database of them on their servers, of ones that have been previously generated, and when you F5, it just gives you a new one. Maybe it stores a cookie on your computer so it never gives you the same one twice, but I think eventually, if you F5'd enough, you might reach the end of its database. You might either get an error or you might get a repeat. Like the fact that you can refresh and you instantly get a new one, there's pretty much no way that they are dedicating the computer power to do it that quickly. It's not running client side either because it's probably very proprietary code. So it'll be server side. Therefore, it's probably just a database of all the faces. You might even get the same face as someone else has, actually. I wonder if someone would test that.
Stay on this one. The left side of his face has hair all over it. The right side of his face is clean shaven.
That's true. And I saw one earlier which had clearly made a mistake. I think it was from a picture of a guy that had a microphone in front of his mouth. So from the perspective of the picture, the microphone was over part of his face. And it had done something weird with the microphone. It had like molded it and done some crazy shit as if it was part of the face. So these are definitely AI generated. No doubt they're AI generated. How based they are on real people, I don't know. But each part of this is probably from an existing photograph. They have just very cleverly merged the seams together. Maybe done a bit of work to make the 3D work as well. Or just taking pictures from the same perspective. Probably somewhere there is a massive database of pictures of noses, each one tagged with which perspective it's taken from. And then they just merge them, kind of like a VTuber model, actually. Now, there probably is more to it than that, because it's a advanced neural net. But it could be that simple. You probably could make something that simple that would do a similar thing. Timber says people are going to use this for porn. There's lots of things you could use this for, and none of them are good. Actually, probably some of them are good, but there are bad things you could use this for. If nothing else, we are going to have to deal with a future where you cannot verify that something actually happened, even with video evidence. We're kind of already there at the higher end anyway. Any number of speeches from, for example, high-end political figures who aren't very good on camera, any number of their speeches could already be AI generated. At least the ones that are in a controlled environment. That speech that we watched last stream from, well, let's take a random example, Biden. Right, a speech that we watched last stream from Biden, at the end of that Tom Hanks video, actually, I commented at the time that could be AI generated. It might not have been. They could have done it with as many takes as they wanted. It was for an edited video. But it could have been AI generated. It could have been they'd smushed Biden's face onto an actor's body. Like from one or two, like a small range of original footage of Biden's face just smushed onto someone's body. Someone who never existed. Ooh, something weird's happened with his collar there. I expect this is a mixture of a white collar and a blue collar. Or, I don't think you'd have a shirt that strong a blue necessarily. Maybe a white collared shirt and a blue something else shirt. But yeah, it's better with the face. It's not so good with other details. Oh, Jesus, Malcatillo. That's like a Doctor Who monster on the right. That's awful. Jesus, yeah, it can do one face, but don't rely on it to do any more than one face. That's horrifying. And look what's going on behind the eye here. What's all this shit? It's like she's got like serious burns just behind the eye. On both of them, it's like these things. Like if these weren't just images, these would be some of the worst monsters in all of fiction. Yeah, that one just looks like a feminist. Not sure about that background. Looks like it's trying to be a flag, but it's failed to be because it's AI. Her right ear looks, oh, from our perspective, her right ear looks a bit mutilated. Her left ear is not too happy either. Ooh, this is based on someone that had an earring, and her ear. Oh, you can't see it. This is based on someone that had an earring, and someone else that didn't. So her ear doesn't look so hot.
Her eyes are also two different colors.
Oh, really? I didn't notice that. That one's fairly normal. I don't see any problems with that. His ears are different shapes. Or at least different orientations.
He's got a huge forehead. Like, you could land an aircraft on that.
True. It's not unrealistic, though. Another person. Some of these are children, some of them are older. Something's going on with his bottom teeth. See, that looks like a comic villain. It looks too perfect, too inhuman. But it could also be real. Like, you might see this in reality and think it's normal. Like, we have literally taught computers to mimic us. Not necessarily a good precedent to set, is it?
This is how the robots will come after us in the future, looking like these people. Very similar, but there's just something off about them.
Yeah. You can kind of see them just on the cusp of actually looking at you, rather than just being a photograph of someone looking at the camera.
Yeah, 2 different earrings. That's interesting.
True. That's a good point. Not sure what's going on with his clothing there.
Face is all right. I'm surprised he did glasses so well.
Yeah.
And she just looks like a stoner, so like, there's nothing wrong with her.
And she looks fine. He looks quite normal, but he's oddly relieved from his background. Awfully large smile on her. And what's that creature on the right? That doesn't look normal at all.
They almost look like putty people.
Like human
Like the secondary
prefabs.
characters. Yeah.
Is that Jeremy Corbyn and Vladimir Putin mixed together?
It's not too bad. That just looks like a kid. That's a pretty good one.
That's not
Like
bad.
there's I would have assumed that was a real person.
Very shadowed eyes, but that could just be the lighting of the scene.
Yeah.
That looks pretty normal. Again, that looks pretty normal. Again, like there's this feeling of a distinction between merely a photograph of a person and this is the person. On screen right now, what is on screen right now is the primary representation of what this is. A picture is a secondary representation. It's a capturing of the primary example. But because this is from scratch, this is the primary example of this subject. This is as primary to this person as the real physical person is in real life. And so this is the person for all intents and purposes. It's not a real human, but it looks like one. And so this 2D representation is as primary to this human representation as a real person is. And so it does kind of give the impression that the computer is actually embodying this face and it's actually looking out at you with its eyes that you are currently seeing. It's looking out from what would otherwise be a photograph, but it is in this case just its own body. It's capable of making ones that are attractive. Well, that's a concerning precedent.
Are you saying robot waifus?
I'm not saying not robot waifus. Oh, Jesus, look at that thing on the left. That's very disturbing.
The blob creature.
Yeah. It's as you said, it's like take visual parts of a human and just smush them together. Sorry. Like how you order it doesn't matter off the screen because it's only focusing on creating one human face in the middle. The rest of it can be whatever. But it's merging it in such a way that every part of it looks human. But together it's just a horrific blob mess of semi-human bits.
It can't really do short people and ears. If it displays both of the, short hair and ears. If it displays both the ears are very identifiable as not being the same.
Different earrings again. In fact, it looks like it's got confused with that left earring. Maybe the right one too, actually. The right earring might have been very heavily reflective, and so it's taken that to be a different thing. It's replaced it with mostly just the background, actually. Again, it looks human, but you know it's not. And so the only thing it can be is a computer looking human. So this is it, what you're seeing here. It's not really alive, but we interpret it that way. And so what you're seeing on your screen is it. is, as far as our brains are concerned, is alive. And that is the face of the end of the human species. Or one of many, anyway. Yes, Jade says the existence of the uncanny valley implies that long ago there was an evolutionary reason to be afraid of something that looked human but wasn't. Indeed, there were many lines of sort of human things, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, etc., that were not exactly human. A mechanism to try to ensure that you were only breeding with things that were genetically similar to you. But these things pass the uncanny valley in almost all cases, because they are using bits of existing humans, just merged smartly. All right. Let's see what else we've got. There was one or two other things. That was that. That was that. So actually, I think that is pretty much everything. There was this as well. So, Drag Queen Storytime Hour, and now, former president of Drag Queen Story Hour Foundation and Children's Court judge arrested on 7 counts of child porn. I do wonder how much this is selection bias, how much, whenever it does happen, everyone notices it, and how much it's, yeah, they do this because they're pedos. It's probably more the latter, to be honest. So, chat, there are 33 minutes left on the clock. I've gone through the stories I think are interesting. The rest of them are mostly pretty dry. So let's do another content vote for what will probably be the last thing we do today. I do have some memes. We have looked at some of them already. If you want to do memes, we can do that, and it might be a shorter section, but we can do other things after that. Well, while we wait, actually, here's one final thing. This was so ridiculous. So on Twitter, someone called Nina Strominger said, I asked Wharton students what they thought the average American worker makes per year, and 25% of them thought it was over 6 figures. One of them thought it was $800,000. Really not sure what to make of this. The real number is $45,000.
What's Wharton?
I probably just an American university.
Never heard of it.
Either way, students implies it's a university.
Yeah.
So, I could believe this. I would like to see her data, but I could certainly believe this would be true. Not a whole lot to comment on, just detachment from reality. Detachment from the... Well, if you have an ideology that focuses on inculcating lies, and not necessarily lies, but ideas that try to get away from reality in order to make a better world, but which actually wouldn't. It's just the goal is to make a better world with ideas that are not aligned with reality, even though they actually don't. They're actually very bad ideas. If you have an ideology focused on that, let's call them lies for short, then yeah, you're likely to not really understand reality very well. And also, if you are a student, that's not necessarily an ideological thing. That's probably pretty normal. If you're a student, you're unlikely to understand it very well either. But also, if you're going into, if you're, I made the argument last time that if you're thinking of going into university or anything similar, you should unfortunately be doing quite rigorously a economic cost-benefit analysis of that to see if it's actually worth the money. If they're going in there and they think that they think that the average American is making 100 plus grand a year, up to as much as 800 grand a year, and that if they get a degree, they'll be making even more than that, then yeah, no wonder that their cost-benefit analysis is going wrong, that they think it's worth it to have tens of thousands of dollars of student debt, if the average American is making much more than that anyway. To be fair, though, it is only 25% of them that thought it was over 100 grand. The point is that it should be about zero thinking that. especially if they are like going into university usually requires a higher than average IQ, which of course is no guarantee of knowing useful things, but it should tend in that direction. All right, Jack. Here's her profile. There's no pronouns in the bio. She describes herself as Professor of Legal Studies and Business Ethics at Wharton, quote, a superior writer and a better than average thinker, according to her father. I will link you to her profile.
Just looked up Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. So it looks like it's a pretty well-established school within Pennsylvania, and it does look like it's one of like the most prestigious business schools in the world. I've just never heard of it. Established in 1881. Oh, it used to be former name Wharton School of Finance and Economy. So like this is pretty cringe coming out of a school that specializes in finance and the economy.
Yeah, this is the place you would expect people to know this properly.
I wonder what they think the cost of bread is.
She says, a lot of people want to conclude that this says something special about Wharton students. I'm not sure it does. People are notoriously bad at making this kind of estimate, thinking the gap between rich and poor is smaller than it is. This was indeed why I asked B school students. I was curious if they were as biased as everyone else, and she's linked some further reading. So yeah, I don't think it says anything bad about Wharton necessarily, but it might say something bad about a larger issue. I probably would have guessed lower than that, actually. I know that in the UK, it's between £20,000 and £25,000 a year. So very few of you voted on what we're doing next, which means that we're either doing an ebb section or a really section. Not sure what that means, but chat, if you don't vote quickly, then we will have a section dedicated to ebb for the rest of the show. There's a link to the
trying to find the
message.
voting.
I put a link to the message there at the bottom. Is it just me, or is the content voting idea getting less popular? Was it a bit of a flash in the pan? I wonder if people are getting less interested, or it's just because the stream is nearly over. You're not feeling
I
like
think it's because it's towards the end of the stream. Like people are clocking out or tired. But if we do the Alex Jones one, maybe not.
I don't really have any Alex Jones related content to go into. No, Bright, you can't. But I appreciate the idea. Is Eb actually here? I don't see him in there. Right. Have you tried out Stellaris yet? No, I haven't played Stellaris yet, Ginge. All right. I'm going to bear it back for a couple of minutes, chat. How about if I drag in someone else to chat for a few minutes? And I won't be long.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
All right, who shall I drag in? I'm only going to go on for a few minutes, but they can stay on afterwards. So I tell you what, let's have a guest vote instead. Years is an option if you want to vote for Years. I think a white heart is usually what she uses to represent herself. There's also Ginge as an option. I'll only be gone for a few minutes, but then we will leave them on for the next section, whatever we do next. I wonder what the orange heart is. We need to do a real-life face-app merging of Years and Ginger and see what comes out the other end. Yearsinger. Gingers. Silent is recommending both. Gizzer. Oh dear.
I love how glowy has just became my icon.
Yeah.
Something I didn't ask for, but I am embracing.
Hmm. All right. Years is getting the most votes. We had Ginger on last time. For now, I'll just bring on Years. Welcome, Years.
Hello.
He is.
Can
All
you
right.
hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Oh, fantastic.
I'll be right back. I'm only going to be a couple of minutes. And when we get
Alrighty.
back, we'll figure out what the hell we're doing next.
Perfect. So have you been, Yiz?
Hello. Sorry,
to you too.
I spoke over you and I didn't hear you. Say that again.
Oh, I asked you how you're doing.
Oh, tired and frustrated. I've been working a lot with this new work contract, which is up. By the way, it's up in about a week, and the job sucks, but I'm making a lot of money. But what sucks worse is I'm making money, and that's good because I can put that money towards life building here. But I don't have time for anything else. I barely can make channel content. I can barely stream, and what's worse is I don't have time to do anything fun. So I don't know. I'm sort of frustrated. I'm missing having time to do things that I think that matter. So I don't know. I got a lot of things to consider. I got to consider if I want to keep trying to make content and doing the internet personality thing and try to make that grow and make that financially good, or if I want to just give up on that and try to work locally. But working locally, it's not as reliable as me trying to make my own content and create my own business, so to speak. So
Whatever one's going to have the best future prospect is probably one you should be focusing towards.
I don't know which one will, honestly. Like I don't know. It's hard for me to grow because I'm so throttled. I don't know if it's worth trying to start fresh with a new identity and everything and try to use mainstream platforms, but it's definitely something to consider. Giving up trying to make a viable living off of internet stuff, because it's one thing if I was constantly doing activism, which people seem to be willing to fund, but I no longer believe that activism works, because all of the activism, all the protests, all the marches I've been a part of for the last 5 years, they don't amount to shit. And the more that I've studied elite theory and the more that I think I know what's going on at the top end with the people who control, let's just say, the West, the less I think any kind of populism or activism does jack shit. I don't think it does anything.
I think that, inverse to you, I actually do think that activism works because I've seen it work. Even like populist activism. But like,
okay, I mean, what I mean is work towards changing government, changing laws, fixing the system. I don't think that's going to work. What activism's good for is awareness and meeting other people that share your views and want to do something about it. That's great. I like that part. But I just, like, I'm getting old now. My husband doesn't want me to get involved in any of this. Half my internet friends tell me to just chill out and not do any of this. And of course, my mother and my family here in the Mountain Holler, they don't want me to give a shit about anything outside the Mountain Holler. So
yeah, it's
not like I have people in my life that want me to do what I feel compelled to do. But no, Jack, I'm not black-pilled. I'm just frustrated because there are things that I want to do that I feel like I'm too old and have made life choices that prevent me from doing. And I want to have a life I enjoy, but I also want to have people in my life that care about the things I think are important and want to be knowledgeable about what's going on in the world. But my husband, my mother, everybody that I know in meat space, not the friends I've made online like Cabal, but everybody in my personal life hates this path that I've taken for the last 5 or 6 years. They don't want me to do this. They want me to just leave it all be and just focus on trying to, build on my land and, play tabletop games with them and just forget the world. But it's really hard for me to do that. I don't know. I've got the fire in me, and it's been causing my life a lot of problems the last few years.
best thing that you can do is try to impact things locally. If you are into like activism
sure.
or anything like that, like your city council is someplace that you shouldn't leave. Like,
Oh, I know.
you should
Yeah.
like, always be there
I promote
petitioning,
localism on my
speaking up.
channel all the time. That's the only type of ism that I promote now is localism.
Because like your city has way more impact over your life than either your state. Like states can do mass mandates, like
I don't even
mass.
live in the city.
Oh, like this works for cities or even rural towns. So like even unincorporated districts still have a council. So like the best thing you can do is just like start at a citywide and then go to all the cities within your county and then build that up to countywide. And then from there, if your county succeeds in doing things, other counties around you will look at that, incorporate that in, because no one wants to be a villain. Like that's not what anyone seeks out to do. They always want to be the hero. So if they can look around them and see things that work, they'll adopt that. And if they see things that don't work, they'll, unless it's ideologically based, they won't adopt it.
Yeah, I know.
And it sounds like you're out in the mountains, which means like I'm guessing Appalachia.
I'm in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains on the border of Tennessee and Virginia, near the Kentucky border.
Yeah, so you're an Appalachian girl, which means that like that's all rural over there. So if your counties around you see that you're all good, like
it's based in red pilled around here. Like, I mean, around here everybody hates the government, and we still remember the Union dogs, and we hate the federal government because we think they destroyed the country 160 years ago, and they did. And it's not that people around here are dumb, so to speak. It's that they don't care. And I think that the folk around here, they believe that the problems we have will blow over and things will be okay. What they don't know is that every little city, even little cities 20 and 30,000 people, a 20 or 30-minute drive from our mountain holler, they have the America Forward programs. They have enforced diversity quotas. They have welfare housing. The little teeny tiny city, not 30 minutes from here, right? In the last 15 years, they've with state money that they get from the feds, they bought up a bunch of old timey properties made with houses on them that were like between 60 and 100 years old, leveled them all, and made these giant communist block housing monstrosities to pump diversity into this area. And in a decade, we've had stabbings and murders here that unlike that we've had in like 20 or 30 years. And it's happening everywhere in America. You can't get away from it. Like I live in a very based area, in a pretty based state. And it's like, no, like the people that live here, they feel like if we just hold true to our values and sort of just ignore what's happening, it'll blow over. But I don't think that that's true. I think that if we don't get enough people locally active here, then there's going to be an encroachment that we can't resist eventually. And that's the thing that really rubs me the wrong way. That's why I can't shut up about all the anti-white stuff. I can't shut up about the encroaching economic enslavement that the globalists want to do to us through the Fed, through the government and everything, is because I don't want to just take it easy and do what my family wants. And then 10 or 15 years down the road, there's either the feds with an army or an anti-white hate mob coming to torch everything in my mountain holler. And my last thoughts being, well, what if I would have just not given up? What if I would have just kept saying stuff and kept being active? Then maybe things would have been different. I don't want that to be my last thoughts here in 10 or 15 years or 20 years. And that's not a sentiment that my husband or my mother or anybody else around here shares. They all try to talk me out of it and tell me that I should just not care. And it's really disheartening. And yeah, like Jack said in chat, everybody just wants to grill and be left alone. But the problem is, we can do that. They won't. The Klaus Schwabs, the Bill Gateses, all of them of the world, they're not going to leave us alone. Kamala Harris, she's not going to leave us alone. You think all these people that are jockeying for power and dominance in America, they're not going to leave me and my people alone. They didn't in the 1860s. They didn't in the 1960s, and they're not going to in the 2060s. They're not going to be happy until every one of us sucks the black tranny cock of diversity. And I don't know. It just makes me mad. because I want fulfillment in my personal life, but I also want to do what's right and what I feel led to do. So it's just, I'm very conflicted with what I should do with myself and my time.
Best thing you can do is push for like assimilation. Like I've said this multiple times about Minnesota, but the reason Minnesota doesn't have, besides the Somali community, which I've also gone into that too, the reason Minnesota doesn't have a lot of racial tensions is because we've assimilated the other cultures. We've stripped them of their previous identity. We've forced them to be Minnesotan. I split them up throughout the state and everything like that. But it sounds like what you're saying is like you're just having a whole bunch of people dumped in one area, and then they're not going to be happy that they're there. You're not happy that they're there. And it just causes tension.
It's every area, every municipality that is on the government teat eventually is going to have enforced diversity. And it's why I don't like Republicans or Democrats, and I don't like the left-right narrative, because it's all in service to the oligarchs that hate us and want us dead. And voting is only viable in very local rural areas anymore. I don't even think it's very viable at the state level. But I do my best to keep hope and to not give up entirely. So I tell people around me to care about local elections. I tell people about what's going on around here. But like most people I live around out here, they don't even vote. They don't care. They just care about what's around here. And I don't know. I want to have a life worth living, but I also I don't want to just check out. And I have a lot of passion. I'm good with words. I'm good at getting people to talk to each other. And I feel like that if I just give up, my voice and my mental energy will be missed, and it could matter at some point. And I would hate to not give of myself to try to make things better in some way. And I'm trying to sort out each year what's the best approach. And I rode the MAGA train, and that didn't go anywhere. I almost went off the cliff with it on January 6th. I'm glad I was waiting in reserves to see if we were going to cross the Rubicon or not. Or I might be in the fucking pokey with the rest of them right now.
You know, at least you have, like, I'm going to put it like this, okay? So, you know, like the old thing of like the unexamined life is not worth living. You have an examined life, and that's why you feel that drive for purpose, because you feel like you need to change things. Like you're a changer. You're not someone who just sits on their ass and grills.
Yeah.
And that at least is something that you can harken back on. Just be like, I'm the person who is, like, you can look at yourself and say, I'm the person who has examined their life and at least has tried to make a change.
Yeah.
Which is way more than anyone else can say.
That's true, but that's like personal fulfillment by comparison to others. That's like saying, well, even though I never did anything or invented anything, I have an IQ of 170 and I'm a genius, so I'm going to take solace in that. To me, that is completely empty garbage. I don't want a statue built to me. I don't want to feel better than others. I want my people to have a future. And oh my God, silent. That is abysmal. I want my people to have a future, and I want people in America to be able to be in control of their own fate again. Like we haven't been in control of our own destiny for like 150, 160 years. And it's just been getting worse. And I don't know, just I want things to be better. And I feel like unless everybody who has even the slightest sliver of desire to make a difference like me, unless we all get loud and pitch in somehow, I worry that we won't have a future. I worry that that our race itself will be over in like a generation or two. It's really sad. And I don't know. It's easy for me to find fellowship online, like with the Cabal and lots of other people. It's just, I'm just so alone and frustrated in my personal life because they just want to play games. They just want to watch funny videos on YouTube. They just want to act like it's 1998 again. And I don't know.
But like for me, I don't really care about the race just as long as the culture is exactly the culture that I live in right now.
I think Yes understands that, but
yeah.
It's not that race is not a factor. Like it's not, race does contribute to culture. We've discussed
Oh,
that
it
I've
does.
before, though.
said many times, it's one of the pillars that makes an ethnicity.
But-
like you've got religion and language and tradition and all that other stuff.
Either way, I
It's
was
just-
going to.
genetics is only one of the factors,
Yes.
but
So, yes, I think often I would have something, something to add to a discussion that would be somewhat grounded in a principle or somewhat directed towards a conclusion. But when it comes to the problems you're dealing with now, I don't really have anything concrete to offer. It's very personal. I don't really have a good
Yeah.
answer. These
I'm
are
just trying to
genuinely
decide.
difficult questions to answer.
yeah.
Um,
Thank you.
the pressures between doing things for your collective and doing things for yourself are always in conflict. There's never a correct answer overall. You're just going to do what you think is best at whatever standards you set for determining what is best. And we're happy to counsel you on what might be the best, but it of course depends
Well-
on what you want.
The Cabal makes me happy. I love this crew of people. It is by far my favorite online community. That's why I'm here all the time and don't really hang out with anybody else. And I'm very thankful for it. And no matter what I decide to do, I'm still going to be a Cabalite and hang out with you guys and do fun stuff and host movies and whatnot.
Good to hear.
Good night, Ginger.
Is that our
Good night,
term?
Ginger.
Cabalite? Or Cabalite?
Cabalite.
I just say
I thought it was
Cabalite.
Cabalian. I've been wrong
Either
this
one
whole
works.
time.
No, either one works. I think most people say Cabalite, but Cabalian works too.
Or if you're an American, who's a nigga? We're who's a niggas.
I am concerned with Cabal that now that we don't have YouTube to bring in new casual viewers, that Cabal might stagnate or separate from society too much. There's no intake really, except the people that we bring in ourselves. That's a concern I have, but then I've still seen just as many new people joining the server. So I'm not sure if that's really justified.
Yeah, we get new people, and almost every stream of mine, we share the link and and have a laugh at the URL. And I'm trying to get dissidents and free thinkers and people that sort of drift into my neck of the woods to at least check out Cabal. So we at least get a little influx from me and a few from some other groups I'm in. And also, I tell people on Telegram occasionally to check you out. Do you have a Cabal presence on Telegram? I'm curious.
I have an Oozloo account on Telegram, but I don't use it.
Well, Telegram's pretty big among the dissident crowd. So if you made an active Cabal or nominated someone to make an active Cabal Telegram, you'd probably get a few people into the mix that way for sure.
Possibly. The reason I don't use it is because the format is basically a step backwards. It's basically Skype. Last time I tried it anyway.
It's kind of like, yeah, I can see why you'd think that. Yeah, I don't particularly like it. It's just a lot of people use it.
Mm.
So the point that you
what?
just brought up.
Mhm. Oh.
Oh, no, continue, yes.
Oh, I was just going to say, when it comes to YouTube and the let's call them the big platforms, right? I don't think that people like you and I, Uslu, who care about truth and who care about reality and talking about reality in what you and I would consider just normal terms, I don't think that there's a future for us, no matter how much we try to conceal what we're doing. I don't think that we're going to be able to grow organically while doing that. What we can do, however, is we can create accounts on like Twitter and Facebook, and we can create new YouTube channels, and we can work on creating something fun and engaging that has, I don't know, maybe secret coded messages or whatever, and work on networking that way. Some people in a group were talking about that the other day. I don't know if that's worth the time or not, but it was an interesting idea I thought we could chew the fat about one day.
Well, I was thinking of doing that for Wizards in Space, actually, and for other things too. Create a channel that was initially for Wizards in Space, but could be used for lots of other things too. It would just be anything that we do that's not directly political. But like with something Wes was saying about something Tim Pool was trying to do, it would be made by people of this political persuasion. We spend a lot of time talking about things of this political persuasion. A lot of references, a lot of jokes, a lot of comments, a lot of analogies we made would relate to politics from this direction, and it would give an area of culture that is entertaining and enjoyable for people, which is also within the realms of this side of politics. So you don't have to have the choice of either I watch something explicitly political, which agrees with me, or I watch something that is a different kind of entertainment. But every now and again, there will be a reference to something I know is not only stupid and not only wrong, but also stupid and destructive if believed. Which is kind of like what happens with me and VTubers, because pretty much everyone has at least something else they watch for entertainment. VTubers is one of the many other kinds of content that I get into, other than the political content which I make myself. Every now and again, a VTuber will say something that relates to politics. To be fair, they do a very good job hiding it. I'm not sure how they do such a good job hiding it. But it's rare, but it does happen.
Feminine wiles, so,
maybe so. But so that occasionally comes up, and I think it would be nice to have an area of culture where you don't have to worry about that. In fact, it will reinforce what you already believe, which I know is not particularly intellectually stimulating, and you should challenge what you believe, but you don't have to challenge it everywhere you go. You can go to some places where there are people you actually like and can trust, even if you don't know them personally. And I think maybe that's even better than the explicit political activism I've been doing, especially because it can fly much more under the radar on YouTube.
Yeah, there's some smart people. There's some smart people I've talked to and had on my channel before. Jared George is one of them. You've got Donald Kent of Imperium Art, and they all contribute to the White Art Collective. One of the things that we came to the realization of, some of them many years ago, me in the last 5 or 6 years, is if you care about the white race stuff, right? Like all the anti-white crap, the mass migration, the destruction of white countries and that kind of thing. White people, especially in the Anglosphere, don't really care about race. You got to find a way to make them sort of acknowledge that we're under a racial attack without pitching to them the idea of some kind of racial unified identity, because white people just in general reject that. We don't care. So with an approach to that is we decided that messaging and music, artwork, comic books, and creating new, fun, engaging material like the game show that I wanted to make, the Discordant Dragons, where we can talk about the ugly anti-white attacks on us in different ways. I think that is the best, healthiest way that we can handle the anti-white race problem that we have without having to do any kind of racial unifying or pro-white racial activism, because our people seem to generally reject that and not want to hear it anyway. So it's why I've taken the route that I have in the last couple of years of just pointing out the anti-white stuff and saying, hey, that's wrong. We don't want to do that to anybody. That shouldn't be done to us. And along those lines is where I came to meet these other creators that discovered that long before I did. And that's why I think what you're talking about can be useful for other ideas too, because most people don't want to hear or engage with complex socioeconomic ideas or political ideas. Most people like to laugh and be entertained after a hard day of work. So like you just talked about, we can weave in the things that matter to us, and hopefully other people, it will matter to them too. And they will know that, hey, this fun creator that does this video game commentary or does this comic book commentary or makes this fun game show or has this fun podcast, he or she talks about these things that I can relate to, but I'm also having fun, so I'll stick around. And so that's why I think that Joe Rogan and Tim Pool have been so successful with what they've built, is because they sort of started doing that a long time ago. And I think that all of us who care about mimetic spreading of the ideas and the language tools that we need to fix what's broken in our corrupt systems, I think that it's better to go that route instead of just let's point out what's wrong and dissect it like a surgeon and talk about it like we're in a room of academics. I don't think that's going to mimetically spread ideas, because if that was going to work, it would have worked 60 or 80 years ago. We have to focus more on entertainment and general camaraderie through the lens of what good ideas and language can we spread to help make a change. I think that's what we can do as creators.
Maybe it's a matter of the time has now come to move on to that more so. I think the analysis is definitely important because it establishes the baseline by which we then move on to promote our own ideas through other mediums. We need to understand why we oppose our opponents and why we're correct. And of course, to re-establish that we are correct, to moralize in that way. But the
So-
advocacy that we would do wouldn't even be explicit. We wouldn't have to deliberately weave it in. It would just be there naturally because it's us creating it. I think that these movements of culture, because our opponents are so bad at creating good media, for example, the entire attempts that they make when they're ideological to make good media, Star Wars, Star Trek, the upcoming Lord Demrangs, for example, etc., all of this stuff, they're very bad at creating good content. But they have a lot of money and backing. And so eventually people will get sick of that, and then they will look over and they'll notice a bunch of other media that they can just go and watch. And it doesn't include insane ideology. It includes, oh, that's refreshing. That guy believes something that I intuitively recognize is true. Whereas all this other stuff that I was watching always seem to mismatch with reality. And they'll be thinking this instinctively, a lot of them. And then there'll be some that just don't really care about politics, and so they just absorb the stuff that isn't political. If culture is going to change, it's probably going to be along those lines. And the more alternatives that are not deliberately ideologically manipulative from our opponents that are available to people, the less of that crap they're going to watch, and the more culture will switch around. I think once cultural momentum is lost by the left and gained by the right, everything else will follow. Currently, we recognize the left as culturally dominant, and you could say that's because of the media or academia or the executive or various other things, and those are definitely factors, but possibly a bigger factor is just that their media is more popular. It's not for any good reason, it's just momentum. It just happens to be since last time. But maybe now is the time to say, we've done the analysis, we know we're correct, we know why we're correct, we have all the data that we need. Now we have to actually go back and fight culturally to win back the entire arena in that area.
So because I like to go back to the previous point you were making about stagnation in Cabal, that's one of the reasons that I started the whole entire Fed party on here. Like every Monday, we cover a whole deep dive into a political leader or a what I call inside the dictator. Like last week's stream with Paul Kagame, like so many people learned like what happened after the genocide, and then like how it is currently, how like Rwanda is currently in a fantastic place because of the different policies that they did, because of the strong guiding hand of Paul Kagame, and because they kicked the French out. Then like we're also doing like Fed philosophy every Friday, where Curious or Cunning Fox just did a whole entire thing on pre-Socratic philosophers. So like actively getting people in the community to go out, do research on their own, bring it back in so that ideas and thoughts don't stagnate. Like we're doing geopolitical deep dives, we're doing the philosophy stuff inside the dictator, even weird things like, you know, spooky stories and everything like that, deep diving into like that kind of thing, just so that you can, you know, expand that thought on the server and not just have it be, you know, everyone just saying the same thing that they've been saying for the past years.
Yeah. For a few months, people have been saying they're sick of all the doom and gloom in the news. And I've been gradually getting the impression, consciously as well as intuitively, that similarly to what you said, and what we've both said for a few times in the past, that positivity and more general media is probably a good way to go. Maybe not exclusively, but significantly.
To answer Bright really quick, he's asking if we created what he's calling the Fed training program. The Fed Fit program was created last night. We did a really good show on it. I got a lot of people starting either like new diets or lifestyle choices and everything. And tonight is going to be the first night where people can come in. It's already all built. The groundwork's there. And you can get a training plan going for you to improve yourself. Because if you feel healthy, you're going to feel better. If you feel better, more likely to accept my white pills.
So on the matter of media, you guys know I was working on new Wizards in Space series. Over the last week, that kind of slowed down because I needed to do more streams. Needed to earn some money with them, essentially. But I will get back to that, and I want to make a channel. I'm not necessarily primarily on YouTube, but part of the reason for creating it will be to reach as many people as possible. So, and it'll be non-political. Create a channel that's non-political for general media, and I'll put Wizards in Space on there first. I'll probably start editing down all the episodes into really condensed formats so people can catch up, and then actually run an RP with that. But essentially, the reason that work on that has slowed down, the reason I haven't started a test campaign for my new rule set and various other things, is I've just been trying to focus on streaming as much as possible at the moment. Times are tough for everyone, let's put it that way. So, yes, I'll get back to that soon. I do think that's probably a good idea. I think there's also a risk that if we specialize ourselves too much to the needs of the collective by focusing on... Oh, Yiz dropped out. You okay there, Yiz?
Sorry about that. Sometimes when I click to see the stream from whoever's seeing it in the live pit, it drops me out of the speaking guest spot.
You would need to watch the stream through me if you try and watch it.
I did earlier, and then I closed to come back, and I clicked the wrong thing by accident.
Okay, no worries. So yeah, I think if we dedicate ourselves too much towards the collective good, too much towards concerning ourselves with issues that are very distant from our personal lives and from our personal development, we get very knowledgeable about a very small amount of a very small total angle of all the things that we could know about, but we miss out potentially on other forms of growth. We may become less useful as people, less compatible with other people. So that is another factor that is worth considering. That we should be able to branch out and be interested in more things that make us a more rounded person. Even though we get very deep knowledge in one direction with all this concerning ourselves with world politics, it's not very rounded. It's very specialized. And so it's maybe harder to engage with other people, which also makes it harder to spread good ideas. I think culture largely changes by, as I said before, the people that appear to be more easily successful in their lives, when the vast majority of people force themselves to live by certain policies and standards and protocols that are unnecessary and arduous. And then they're all doing that. It's completely normal. And then someone comes in with effortless ease, not doing any of that stuff and living a perfectly fine life. So essentially it comes back to be an exemplar. Be the best person you can be even better than everyone else, and be better because you're different from everyone else. That, I think, on a large scale is how culture begins to irrevocably change. As he has said, activism doesn't directly cause it. It can contribute, it can be a flashpoint event, etc. For smaller issues, it definitely can make a difference. But for an entire society, it's much more small scale but ever-present factors. Like who the most confident and at ease people are and what they believe. And then what people watch for entertainment and who is best at creating things that are just good on their own without needing to try very hard.
The personal quandary that I'm at, that we were talking about when you took your break and came back, was I don't want to quit what I'm doing, but at the same time, I want to have a personal life worth living and actually do things that are fun again, because I don't feel like I've really been a fun person or done anything fun in like 4 or 5 years. And the people in my life know that. And I miss getting to play Warframe and play video games and do fun stuff with my husband and his friends, and actually have a life that isn't just spending every waking moment trying to find out what the government and the media are lying about and doing something about it. I guess that I don't have to explain to Cabal what it's like to be an obsessive weirdo with autism and ADHD.
Cabal doesn't have to be a venue for resisting political orthodoxy exclusively. It can also be a venue, a center for a new branch of media, a new branch of entertainment, a new branch of cultural expression. So yeah, I think maybe starting to make that transition is probably a good idea, especially because what I've been doing, the sort of just streaming about what's gone wrong this week, is depressing people. It's lost interest from a lot of people, possibly because there's not a whole lot going on and there's a usurper in charge of the US.
Yeah, that sucks.
So reporting
What in particular happened this week? What were you referencing? I didn't pick up on it.
not a lot. Today we talked about the Patriot Front quote unquote leaks, which is pretty funny. We talked about Lord of the Rings casting being mostly black people.
Yeah. I listened to about half the stream. I was listening to it in the vehicle while I was working today. I missed the part about Patriot Front. I know some guys in Patriot Front. I've been following them since 2018. What were you guys talking about with Patriot Front?
Well, there was leaks from a common leaking source, which showed activity from them in 2017 and 2018, and then suddenly in 2021 as well. And you say you know people in the group. That's interesting, because we were speculating about the way they are acting now appears to be very artificial. It seems like they're either feds or they are being run by someone with a lot of money who is holding them to very particular standards.
I've been following their Telegram, and I know a couple of people that I've marched with before that have joined Patriot Front, and they tell me about it. Patriot Front, the reason why it is seemingly different now is they have finally gotten thousands of people involved, and they have been building money and investors. There are a lot of people involved in Patriot Front that actually have a lot of money and want to try to fix this country, but they don't reveal their identities. So there is a lot of money in Patriot Front and a lot of people that want to do what they're doing. We'll just put it that way. Now, every organization like that, I am certain, has Fed informants and probably proper feds in it. I'm not saying that that's an impossibility, but I think that it is still a mostly genuine organization from what I can tell. And the reason why I think we're starting to see more of them in the media, more coverage, is they're doing a lot of organized things now that they finally have the logistics and the money and the people trained and connected to start doing things large scale. And of course, there's always the media angle of, hey, look, we found a new boogeyman. Let's give him some attention. There's always that angle too.
I think we were talking earlier, we figured that maybe there were genuine elements in there and that it was less likely that it was a big organization where everyone just kept the secret. But there are many elements about the way they're operating that looks very artificial. And maybe that's part of their new image. But if so, it's a paradigm shift. We've never seen anything like it before. It does seem unlikely. It doesn't even seem like it would be effective either, especially because they do seem to be quite outwardly fascistic, which is unlikely to pick up a lot of support.
They are not fascistic. They are patriots. They want what I want. They want America to be what it was supposed to be before the Union dogs destroyed it.
They have a fascis or whatever it's called, the bundle of sticks, in one of their flags.
Yep.
A lot of their material refers to fascist ideas. There's a leak recently, a quote-unquote leak, of them looking very much like they're badly acting. And then as soon as the camera stops rolling, they do like a Roman salute and Sieg Heil and whatnot, which looked very, very fake to me.
I have not seen that. I have not seen that. That might be yellow propaganda. I don't know. The guys that I know in Patriot Front are not from the neo-fash, neo-Nazi camp. They are from the MAGA Patriot camp people, like they're like proper neo-Confederates, people that think that America has not been America for a very long time and want to fix that. Now, I'm not saying that the group has changed, but you have to understand that a lot of times when you see young guys doing the Roman salute, it's a meme. Like, I used to do it in high school with my friends. A lot of people who are MAGA patriots, we do it to each other in private as a joke. It's part of the comedic LARP. Like, hey, look, we're the Nazis now. Isn't this funny? Like, a lot of American patriots think that's a meme and a joke. Like, and if you see some candid videos of guys doing that, that doesn't mean like, oh, we found the secret Nazis. These guys are the evil guys. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that.
right, it still looked like pretty unconvincing acting, and having the fascist logo on your flag as well doesn't seem like a great choice if you're trying to.
Now
Get
that
attention.
is new to me. I didn't know that. That's new. Again,
I
like
wonder
said,
if we're talking
I don't
about
know a
different
lot about
organizations
Patriot
here.
Front. I've just been following their Telegram for about, let's see, since probably late 2018.
So I want to make sure we're talking about the same group here, yes.
We are. We're
well,
definitely talking about Patriot Front.
Same name, but there's. Let me see if I can find the images that people posted earlier. The group that did this. Let me show you. The group that did this.
The ones that got beat up by Antifa.
Yeah, those guys. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's who I'm talking about. Yeah.
They glow extremely brightly.
I can see why you would think that. Maybe they do now. I don't know. Like I said, I just know a few guys that are in it. I've been following their Telegram for a while. Maybe it's been some kind of weird secret Fed op for a long time. I don't know, but I just know I know that there's a lot of genuine people involved, and I like them. And like, if you go to their website and read about it, it's cool. If you follow their Telegram, there's a lot of really based, red-pilled people in there that want based things, and I don't know.
There's the
It's hard to know what is and
flag.
isn't compromised anymore. I'll put it that way. But
there's the fascist logo on the flag in the background there. And again, I'm not trying to morally
I see
impose.
That. Interesting.
I'm not trying to morally impose that fascist equals bad. Just this doesn't seem like just patriotism. If it has that, it seems like it's either like that as a symbol for some other reason, or genuinely a different ideology than merely patriotism. Their website, I'll take you to their website. Hold on. Because their website was, the thing is, it looks exactly like what someone would write if they wanted to convert a lot of US patriots into fascists to create chaos. Essentially exactly what the enemies of the US would want. So here's the website. So I'll skip down to liberty, right? This is the section they have on liberty. America will be unshackled from the tyrannical rule of a corrupt and ineffective state which subverts the national interest in favor of a global plutocracy. Nothing wrong yet. Sovereignty will be pursued with the securing of the American homeland against the invasion of foreign nations and interests. Again, there's nothing particularly wrong with that. The revival of the American revolutionary spirit will guide the people towards their inalienable right to self-determination on the course to fulfill their destiny. Again, it's all acceptable stuff, but they've put nothing, not a single mention of free expression in there. Which seems a bit surprising, nothing about common American rights. And there's other things in here as well. Like, what's written here does not look like what a patriot group would write. And this is very, very expensive stuff. This is a high-end website. And you got their... Go on.
There is a good video. It was about an hour and a half interview that Thomas, the leader, creator of Patriot Front, did on Odyssey a couple weeks back. I just linked it in the chat. The questions that you guys are talking about are addressed in that live stream. And I listened to it on the road last week. And I haven't paid attention to Patriot Front in a long time. They could be a lot different now. I don't know. I'm just saying that between like 2018 and 2020, I paid quite a bit of attention to them. And I knew some guys that got involved, and it seemed completely positive and healthy and good. And maybe things have changed a lot. I don't know. But I just know that at least in origin, it was a decent thing that I agreed with. I don't know what it's like right now, but
this bit is a reference to 14 words, which again, I'm not trying to morally impose, just that appears to be what they're about.
Well, there's nothing wrong with the 14 words.
No, I know. I'm just saying it is used by people of a persuasion that is not merely patriotic.
Correct.
Fascist symbol there as well on their badges. The thing is, if you were following them up until about 2020, then that fits in because it looks like they were, if they were subverted or something, it looks like that was 2021. It looks like that was near the end of 2021. Maybe
things changed a lot. Maybe the person in charge said, "Hey, there's a really strong nationalistic, fascy, Reiki type of thing going on," and maybe they leaned heavily into that, or that's what he always wanted. I don't know. I just know that if you spend a lot of time with nationalists like I do, they tend to like fashy, Reiki looking imagery, and they reuse them a lot. It's the same way with the New Justice Party. It's the same thing with Patriotic Alternative. Hardcore nationalists like upper right quadrant things, and so they use those icons and they use that speech. But I mean, that's just how it is.
I understand. I'm sure that you can tell it's difficult to be objective on this because we have not very much to go on. I'm trying to make a conclusion based on mere indications. But every indication I've seen points in the direction of this one would not help the people that are involved in it, would not reach the ends that they want, and two looks like what a fairly inarticulate opponent would set up if they had the time and the money. Here's their Odyssey, which you talked about just now. The one that you linked is not from this channel. This is the Patriot Front channel. Look how expensive all this looks. Now,
Yeah, I told you, there's a lot of money involved in Patriot Front. They have good backers.
Again, if they do, then this is something new. This is a paradigm shift. This is not really a grassroots movement anymore, if that's the case. Which maybe that's the case. But for that reason, I think at the very least, it's understandable where people would think it's
totally. Yeah, like I said, I'm not here to die hard defend him or anything. Just share what I know. And another thing that I need to bring up that I talk about with the MAGA libertarian crowd a lot is everybody's so quick to say, look, this is a Fed. Look, this is a PSYOP. Look, this is A, B, C, D, and E. And if we always do that, well, we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot, because anybody who actually gets their shit together and starts doing stuff that may be an actual ally, that could be something genuine, it's like the boy who cried wolf thing. We're gonna just disregard it and attack it just like our enemies want us to. So that's a double-edged sword there. It's hard to know.
I've said that before.
Hard to know exactly where to fall.
Yep, I agree. I've said that before. The risk is relatively low, but the hazard, if you fully commit, is fairly high. So it is understandable, and we know that certain groups, probably Fed or similar, do things like this. We know it does happen, and so being aware of the risk is necessary. But of course, that needs to come with balance.
Well, when it comes to fashy, authoritarian sounding things, keep in mind, almost every single revolution, group, conflict is backed by some greater power. It's been the case all throughout history. It's the case now. So if something like this looks like it might be a Fed op or have big money funding, it's probably because it's true. Like every revolutionary group is almost always being at least funded or directly puppeted by some powerful entity. Mossad does it, CIA does it, the Kremlin does it, China does it. Like it happens. Iran does it. Not Iran. Saudi Arabia does it. Like
that was our theory.
Iran does it a lot.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about Iran, so I can't speak on that. But
they're probably the number one funder of this kind of activity around the entire planet. Like they have nothing but money to throw at this. Like especially in the Middle East, like they're the number one funder of movements in the Middle East.
What you've just said, Years, is what Isaiah suggested earlier as a possibility, that it might not be US Feds doing this. That I think Isaiah implied it doesn't really match their modus operandi very well.
Maybe it's
it could easily be an NGO. It could easily be a foreign power doing this.
And NGOs are actively involved in this kind of activity too, so it's not good to count them out.
And also keep in mind, NGOs like the Soros crew, it is incorrect to think they are left-wing or communist. These people like conflict of all stripes. They will back a neo-Nazi group. They will back an anti-fascist group. As long as it causes disarray and for the middle class to be wiped out and governments to be destabilized and need loans, they win. So they will back anything that will lead to this kind of conflict.
Yeah. I wonder if this has been a common pattern in history, that once the wealthy get too emplaced with their wealth and too powerful, they start causing artificial problems in society just to reap the benefit from it. They start causing fluctuation so that they can get on the wealthy end of that fluctuation, so that they can extract from the correct edge of that fluctuation, either up or down. Otherwise, there are fewer fluctuations and fewer ways to extract money. It's essentially subverting the entire world as an investment. I wonder if that's always been the case or if that's something new. It seems to be happening either way. And I agree, is the highest echelons of our opponents are not communist or radical left. They're just using the radical left. And they're probably using the radical right as well, as you say, but it seems mostly the radical left. Because they're useful.
I don't think that they're used equally. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, keep in mind that no matter where the conflict comes from, it's good for the people that fund this globalist shit. Because the more people that they get to create conflict and the more disarray, well, it's just a win for them. Because they have all kinds of plans that they can utilize to try to strip wealth, extract resources, and get even fatter and gain more power. Like, that's been the game for a long time now.
Yeah. So I guess what we have with what you've said, Years, and what, as I said earlier, modulating my earlier take, refining it, that possibly kind of meets in the middle, that perhaps there are lots and lots of genuine people in this movement. Perhaps the fascist symbology is explicable by the fact that they are actually pretty blue square. That they may well be funded by foreign powers, but perhaps they still have some degree of autonomy, and that this is genuinely what the group would want to do, with only a little bit of modification from standards imposed by exterior forces that are investing in them. That maybe it is real, maybe it is a paradigm shift, so that it's not like the grassroots movements we know. So I suppose the only question left, aside from all that, is now we have to examine this. Why do we care about feds? And I think
I don't care about feds anymore.
Okay, well, then why does anyone? Why does anyone who might think that these are feds? Is it possibly simply the possibility of being trapped in something? Of going to one of these marches and then the authorities know who you are and can identify you for something later, like they did with January the 6th? Or a way to funnel all of the dissident members into one place so that they can isolate them and do whatever with them, just as a way to control their opposition, essentially. If that's what it is, then it makes sense for us not to even begin supporting it. And so, arguably, that's something they should probably have been aware of, Patriot Front, if they wanted more membership. They should have been aware of just how fed they looked. Perhaps we can only trust grassroots movements, even if something that looks like a Fed isn't actually. Or maybe it's better to just say, yeah, I am a dissident. You're welcome to identify me. I'm still fighting for this thing.
That's how I am, because I just assumed that my shady ass government and the Mossad and probably even other governments, I just assumed that anyone who's anyone with any type of dissident is on somebody or all of their lists already anyway. I assume that I am going to be a known entity because of my involvement with the MAGA marches, my involvement with January the 6th, my involvement with people like Don the Pleb. I'm just assuming that even a nobody like me is on at least a few of these government lists. And so definitely people like Thomas are going to be on the list. Definitely people like Mark Collette are going to be on the list. And it just, I don't think that being worried about, oh, that group has got feds in it, or I'm not going to do this because I might go on a Fed list. If you care at all to be publicly known and get involved with anything, you're on a government list. That's just how it is now.
I understand.
You just got to deal with
it's
that.
It's not just about being known to them, though. And there will be some who this might be their first time, the first way they get on a list. But it's not just about being known, it's also about being controlled. January the 6th is an example. You said earlier that you're glad you didn't go because they captured a bunch of people. Essentially, they are political prisoners now. This is a political prisoner machine. If it is run for that reason, if it is controlled by opposition.
Even if it isn't, I still encourage everyone to avoid doing these in-person marches and protests. I think that we are at the point now to where people that are aware are aware. So only do these things at your own risk, and only if you are confident in yourself, and only, in my opinion, if you don't mind, maybe sitting somewhere for a year without a trial, because we're getting very close to that point, possibly.
I wonder if we apply that conception of the world that Soros and people like him, the people that invest in chaos, that's what they're doing, and that's essentially the shape of the world as far as the elites are concerned. What would they prefer when it comes to the notion that we were talking about earlier of building culture instead of just speaking our minds? Would they prefer that we go out on marches like this, or would they prefer that we make entertaining content that gets a lot of people's attention, not for political reasons, just because it's better, but ends up neutralizing the politics anyway?
I think they would prefer us to march and label ourselves as some kind of dissident nationalist, because then we are playing into their narrative and their paradigm. And this is why when I've talked to you about the Go Free stuff and the no white guilt stuff, a big part of that is stepping outside of the anti-white narrative and not playing the villain.
Yeah.
I don't want to goose step or put on a swastika or talk about fascism or go wear a skull mask and say, "Oh, bro, it's gonna be so based. We're gonna kill these commies. We're gonna take back the Capitol." No, don't play the villain, because not only do you lose regular people whose will and compliance you need to actually fix things, but you make yourself a big fat target to get your life destroyed. So don't do that.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not punching right here. I'm not saying that I don't like Thomas or everybody who gives a Roman salute is a bad person. I'm not saying that. I'm not punching right. A lot of young guys get really wrapped up in this, hardcore booted nationalism stuff. I understand that. I was a hothead and young once myself. But I think that a wiser young man would realize that the path of high morality and playing a hero for your own people instead of a villain for other people is the wise path that men should take.
Possibly. Probably usually. Especially when it's a cultural war, and the argument's much easier to make for that then, yes. Maybe through a new generation of warfare, it has to be that way.
Well, I think that we're firmly into fourth generational warfare, and memes, ideas, and social media are the bullets, bombs, and tanks of this battlefield.
Yeah.
And no amount of guns and soldiering, and again, I say this with all the love in the world, LARPy behavior, I don't think that that's going to affect our enemy in this war like what you and I do are going to affect our enemy, like what Joe Rogan does, like what Tim Pool does, like what our buddy Sargon does. Because when you spread these ideas around, you are helping spread the curative contagion to our enemy's disease of lies. And that, in my opinion, is more important than having 1,000 armed young men who are ready to fight and die for a cause, because guess what? Our enemies want that. They want us to make ourselves target and fall on our own swords. That just feeds their narrative to make us look like villains, and it gets rid of passionate young men. So that's, I could talk about this all day long. I talk about this a lot in my own time.
I think probably how it would go is that someone who would get involved with a movement like this would say, "So you're saying that we should just lie down and do nothing?" And the obvious answer to that is it's literally more difficult to take the slow road.
Yes.
It's I don't mean to say that it's more difficult in every sense, but
it's more difficult when you're a hot-headed young man that wants to fight the bad guys. It's a lot harder to say, well, instead of marching and feeling like a badass, which, let's be honest, strong masculine men, it's healthy for them to want to feel like successful badasses. I like that. That's a good masculine quality. But the problem is, I don't think that on the world stage or in the societal phase that we're in right now, I don't think that skull masks and marching and a display of arms is going to win this war. I think it is morality, speaking wisdom and truth in the face of lies, and getting as many people as we can off of the poisoned teat of the establishment lies. I think that is where the battle is being won right now. And that's what you and I do. And that's what a lot of the smart and most influential white positive nationalist American, whatever you want to call us, the dissident folks who wants our societies to be what they're supposed to be and our systems to not be corrupt. Call us whatever you want. We are having victories in the informational war, in the info war. And I think that it is as unappealing as that is for a hot-headed young man who wants to, put the boots to the bad guys. I think that's the phase we're in right now. I just hope that we have a lot of these passionate young men around and ready when it is time for physical stuff. So that's why I don't poo-poo these guys. Like I want them to be hot-headed and combat trained and ready to go if need be. I just don't think that time is now. And I hope that we don't get to that phase, but we might.
Possibly the issue that leads people to thinking ideologically that this is a good idea is the same people who, the same reason that people get into communism and socialism in the first place, because they can see one step ahead of them, but they're not simulating the next step or the next step or the next step. They're not simulating the various side effects that come even from their first step. Mm-hmm. They're simulating only, I see a problem, I attack the problem. And so telling them that's not the right way to approach the problem, they either have to then think more deeply, which most people try to avoid, or merely reject you. And so usually they will do the latter. But that's something that comes with age, is being able to simulate more effects around you, more side effects of what you do.
You're around 30 now, right, Ooze?
Yeah.
I'm sure that you're a different man than you were at 25 and a different man than you were at 20, right?
Mm.
I think that a lot of these young men, because a lot of people in Patriot Front and groups like this, they're young men. They're between 20 and 30, coming of age, finding out, what things they can get involved in, how they can make a difference, how they can feel like a hero, that kind of thing. And I think that a lot of these men, they are in many ways a product of the cancer that we are fighting. Because if we weren't a dead society riddled with terminal cancer, then these men would probably have wives and be fathers and working on creating their own business and, having responsible jobs in their community. But all of that has been taken from us and destroyed generations ago. And I think that stuff like this is a product of the cancer that we're trying to heal, that we're trying to get rid of.
Mm. This has been a good chat, but I'm afraid I'm pretty tired. We're at the bottom of the show, and I'm at the bottom of my day as well.
Me too. I'm ready to call it quits. But I've had a lovely chat. Thank you for having me on again. I'm sorry to be black-pilled. I'm not really black-pilled, but
no, I don't think
I'm just sort of morose and tired, and got a lot of thinking to do and a lot of life choices to make.
It's a time of constant crucibles, and a little while ago when I got banned from YouTube, I had a brief one where I had to sort of readjust my perspective on a lot of things, and it helped.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it went fairly well in the end. Maybe you're having the same thing now.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not like I lost my income because I barely make any money doing what I do anyway. It's just I would like to make just enough to where I don't feel compelled to try to have regular work. And I'm not even halfway to that yet with the kind of money that I can make making content. Maybe one day, we'll see. Or maybe some new money-making enterprise will present itself to me, and I'll sort things out. But as it stands right now, I'm sort of I'm having to look at things like, do I want to go a more personal life, self-fulfilling path and give up on the bigger picture stuff? Or do I lean heavier into the bigger picture stuff, maybe permanently sabotaging my personal life and the people that have been with me for, 12 or 13 years? It's difficult for me. But anyway, like we said, into the stream, I'll hush. That's for another time.
That's quite all right. Possibly you can do both. Make your personal life hobbies the thing that helps the bigger picture.
We'll see what comes up. I'll be thinking on it. I've got some ideas.
If you can find a hybrid between two competing pressures, it's usually the best idea. So maybe we can do that. I'll probably be trying to do the same thing as well. And one final note on content: streams do not build audience; they reinforce the existing audience, which is why
Correct.
I have such an immensely strong community, but it's still pretty small.
I do think that catchy short form content is a great way to net new people to the fold.
I should have been doing that for years, and the reason I didn't stream for so long is because I was convinced that I should be doing short form content. So okay, I did a stream a few days ago. Let's make a video. Then I had no motivation to do it, and that was always my issue. So
Yeah.
then I started at some point just streaming, give up on the intention of doing short form content, and nothing's changed since then. I still want to do it, but I have motivation issues, and that's something I just haven't been able to motivate myself to do. I thought recently that I should do like 2 or 3 minutes, really short explanations of my conception of a thing. Like no flashy bullshit around it. Just go straight in with talking about the idea and then end when I finish talking, and just try and condense it as much as possible and spread those videos. I think they'd be pretty successful, but on YouTube these days, probably not. As soon as someone notices it, they won't be successful anymore, if they would have been before at all anyway. And it would just be my
Especially
personal
with
conception.
YouTube's version of shadow banning, which is just throttling your growth in the algorithm. That basically kills you as a channel.
But if I made those and they were really good, they might spread through other means. They might spread on other sites. They might spread regardless of the throttling.
Oh, for sure.
But they'd have to be really good. I mean, it's years since people started doing this stuff now.
Well, I'm sure we'll find a way. And in the meantime, we have a wonderful community. We have each other. And thankfully, we have truth, science, and righteousness on our side.
True. Right. Chat, we will continue these discussions and many more next time. Thank you for joining me. I've gone 40 minutes over the time that was funded for. I should maybe think about how that system works. Maybe do something else with it. But either way, thank you for joining me, everyone, and I will see you next time. Farewell.